Hi, I'm Emily. About 15 years ago in a medium-sized American city, life seemed almost perfect. I was married to Michael, a charming man, and we had a beautiful daughter named Sophie. But beneath this happy surface, my world was about to fall apart. One evening, Michael came home looking different. His usual warmth was gone, and he seemed cold and distant. He said, "Emily, we need to talk," avoiding my gaze. Then he told me he had filed for divorce. I was shocked. Divorce? Michael, what are you talking about? Is this some kind of joke? But it wasn't a joke. He explained that his mother, Elizabeth, had influenced his decision. She never liked me and believed I was too much for her own daughter. She convinced Michael that I didn't belong in their family. As I tried to understand this betrayal, things got even worse. Elizabeth had created a plan to make sure I would lose not only my husband but also my daughter. They accused me of stealing a large sum of money from the family business. I remember sitting in the lawyer's office, feeling crushed. "Mrs. Emily, the evidence against you is strong," the lawyer said. "It will be hard to prove you're innocent." "But I didn't do it. They're lying," I argued. Despite my protests, the legal system seemed to be against me. Elizabeth's power and money were overwhelming. In court, Michael sat next to her, like a shadow under her control. My lawyer said passionately, "Your Honor, my client is clearly innocent. The accusations are false and based on personal grudges." But Elizabeth's lawyer was clever. "The evidence speaks for itself," he countered. "It's clear that Emily is not only a thief but also an unfit mother." The judge's gavel hit the stand, and the sound echoed in my breaking heart. Custody of Sophie was given to Michael. I saw the smug look on Elizabeth's face as the decision was read. After the court session, I went to Michael, begging, "Please, Michael, don't do this. Sophie needs her mother." But he didn't care. "It's for the best. Emily, you're not who I thought you were," he said coldly. I went back to an empty home, with silence reminding me of Sophie's absence. The walls still echoed with her laughter, making the loss even more painful. Over the next few weeks, I kept trying to reach out, but Michael and Elizabeth made sure I had no contact with Sophie. Every missed visit, every ignored call, felt like a knife twisting deeper into my heart. In the midst of this darkness, I made a promise to myself. They had taken my family and tried to ruin my name, but I wouldn't let them break my spirit. I decided to start over, to create a life Sophie could be proud of if she ever learned the truth. So, I packed my bags, left behind everything I knew, and moved to a new city. It was time to turn the page and start a new chapter in my life. Little did I know, the future would bring surprises and twists I couldn't have imagined. Moving to the new city felt like stepping into a whole new world. I was determined to rebuild my life, not just for myself, but for Sophie. I started a small business, pouring all my heart and effort into it. Slowly, it began to grow, and so did my confidence. During this time, I met Jack, a single father with a heart as big as his smile. One evening, while walking through a busy street market, he said, "Emily, you have an incredible strength. It's really inspiring." I smiled, feeling warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. "Thanks, Jack. Life has thrown a lot at me, but I keep going," I replied. As we spent more time together, our relationship grew stronger. We decided to blend our families. Jack had a son, Lucas, and a daughter, Emma, who quickly became as dear to me as my own Sophie. One day, while we were all having dinner, Lucas asked, "Mom, why doesn't Sophie ever visit? Don't you miss her?" Tears filled my eyes. "Of course I do, Lucas, more than anything, but sometimes things are complicated." Jack squeezed my hand under the table, offering silent support. Despite the love and happiness in our new family, a part of me always ached for Sophie. I tried reaching out, sending letters and gifts, but they were always returned unopened. Michael and Elizabeth had filled Sophie's head with lies about me. They told her I had built my business with stolen money and that I was someone to be ashamed of. One day, I received a letter from Sophie. My heart leaped with hope, but as I read her words, my world fell apart again. "Emily, I don't want anything to do with you. Dad and Grandma told me everything. You're a thief and a liar," she wrote. I broke down, the pain of her words unbearable. Jack found me crying in our bedroom. "Emily, what's wrong?" he asked, concerned. "It's Sophie. She hates me, Jack. She believes all their lies." Jack held me close. "We'll get through this. Emily, you're not alone anymore." As the years went by, our family grew stronger, and my business became a successful company. We moved into a larger home, and our lives were filled with love and laughter. But I never stopped missing Sophie. I often watched the kids play in the backyard, wondering what Sophie was like now. Was she happy? Did she ever think of me? "You've built something amazing here," Jack said to me one evening as we sat on the porch, watching the sunset. "I just wish Sophie could see this." I nodded, a tear rolling down my cheek. "Me too, Jack, me too." Little did I know, the truth about my past was about to come out in a way I never expected. Years passed, and my small startup had grown into a thriving business. I had become a well-known entrepreneur, but my heart still ached for Sophie. Meanwhile, Sophie had grown into a smart and independent young woman attending university. Although we were still estranged, I kept track of her achievements from afar and felt proud of her accomplishments. One day at the university, Sophie overheard a conversation that changed everything. Hidden behind the library shelves, she listened as Michael and Elizabeth spoke. "I can't believe how easy it was to fool everyone, especially Emily," Elizabeth gloated. "Framing her for theft was the best thing we ever did." Michael smirked and replied, "Yeah, and the best part is Sophie still believes every lie we told her about her mother." Sophie felt the ground slip beneath her. Shock, anger, and betrayal rushed through her as she realized how they had deceived her. Later that day, she confronted them. "How could you lie to me all these years? You made me hate my own mother." Michael tried to explain, but Sophie wouldn't listen. "I don't want to hear your excuses. I need to find out the truth for myself." Sophie stormed out, her heart heavy and her mind full of questions. Later, she reached out to me. I was in my office when I got her call. "Mom, it's Sophie, can we meet? I need to talk to you," she said, her voice trembling. My heart skipped a beat. "Of course, Sophie, anytime." We met at a quiet cafe the next day. The moment I saw her, all the years of pain and longing rushed back. She looked so much like the little girl I remembered, but she was all grown up. "Sophie, I've missed you so much," I said, my voice full of emotion. "Mom, I heard Grandma and Dad talking. They lied to me about everything," Sophie admitted, her eyes filling with tears. I reached for her hand. "I know, Sophie, I've waited every day to tell you the truth." We talked for hours, sharing our pain and clearing up misunderstandings. Sophie was filled with regret. "I'm so sorry, Mom, I should have known better. Can you ever forgive me?" Tears ran down my face as I hugged her. "There's nothing to forgive, Sophie, you're my daughter, and I love you no matter what." Reconnecting with Sophie felt like finding a missing piece of my soul. She started spending more time with me, Jack, and her half-siblings, fitting in like the final piece of a puzzle. One evening, while we were having dinner, Sophie looked around and said, "I never knew what a real family felt like until now. I'm so grateful to be here." Jack smiled warmly at her. "You've always been part of this family, Sophie. We're just happy you're here with us now." As I watched my family laugh and talk, a sense of peace washed over me. All the years of struggle and pain had led to this moment of joy and reconciliation, but I knew our story wasn't over. The truth about Michael and Elizabeth's lies had been revealed, and it was time for justice. In the courtroom, tension filled the air as Sophie took the stand. It was time to confront the years of deception. "Can you tell the court what you heard on the day in question?" the prosecutor asked. Sophie's voice was calm, but I could see the pain in her eyes. "I overheard my grandmother, Elizabeth, and my father, Michael, bragging about framing my mother for a crime she didn't commit. They did it to keep me away from her," she testified. The courtroom gasped in shock. Michael and Elizabeth sat still, their faces pale. The prosecutor continued, "And how did this make you feel?" "Betrayed, angry. I've been lied to my whole life," Sophie replied. Michael's lawyer tried to challenge Sophie's testimony, but the truth was undeniable. The judge's gavel came down with force, declaring Michael and Elizabeth guilty. They were led away, and when Michael's eyes met mine, there was no regret, only quiet acceptance of his fate. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as the judge gave the sentences. Elizabeth would serve time for conspiracy and perjury, while Michael was sentenced for his role in the false accusations. Outside the courtroom, Sophie hugged me tightly. "I'm so sorry, Mom, for everything." I hugged her back, feeling a chapter of our lives close. "It's over now, Sophie, we can finally heal." When we got home, Jack and the kids had prepared a small celebration. A banner read "Justice and Joy." As we gathered around the table, laughter and chatter filled the room. Jack raised his glass and said, "To Emily, a woman of incredible strength and love, and to our family, united and strong." I looked around at the smiling faces of my children, Sophie, Lucas, and Emma, and felt a deep sense of peace. The journey had been long and full of pain, but we had come out stronger. Later that evening, as the kids played in the backyard, Sophie and I sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Mom, I can't change the past, But I promise to make up for it every day, Sophie said, holding my hand. I gently squeezed her hand back. You've already made me so proud, Sophie. We have our whole future ahead of us. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over our home, I realized this wasn't just a victory in court. It was a triumph of love, resilience, and the strength of family. And that's the end of my story, a journey from betrayal to justice and, finally, to love and unity. As we close this chapter, I want to leave you with a question. In this story, Sophie grew up believing lies about her mother, Emily, and only discovered the truth as an adult. If you were in Sophie's shoes, realizing you'd been misled about a parent your entire life, would you be able to forgive and rebuild the relationship? Or would the betrayal be too deep to overcome? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories. Your support means the world.
You're really clueless, aren't you? The inheritance. Hand it over already, said Mary, my sister-in-law, barging in as soon as the front door was opened, happily talking at her own pace. Despite not being close, her sudden demand left me baffled. If it weren't for Henry, I wouldn't even want to come near such a gloomy place. Indeed, to Mary, adorned in flashy clothes and accessories, the home of her contrasting brother Henry and his daughter-in-law, me, must have seemed dreary. However, I thought Mary, who talked about the inheritance at the doorway without even looking at her late brother's portrait, was much more spiteful. This attitude of Mary's wasn't new. She boasted about her confidence in her appearance and often treated the gentle-natured Henry harshly. I had heard from him that once he began to advance in his career and earn a significant income, Mary changed her attitude and started cozying up to him. I was truly appalled by Mary's lack of compassion, barely visiting when Henry was repeatedly in and out of the hospital and not crying at all during the funeral. I had decided to have nothing more to do with her, but greedy Mary wouldn't have it. We don't have all day, hurry up. Sally must be busy too, right? Mary, with eyes gleaming with anticipation, was convinced she was entitled to the inheritance. However, I possessed something that would utterly change that expression. It was the last words from my late husband. Read this, and you'll understand everything. I am Sally, a widow in her mid-60s, living a modest life. I lost my beloved husband about a month ago, his long-standing illness having worsened. We met and married in our 40s, so we had no children. The loss felt overwhelming, having supported each other for 20 years. Was there any need to keep cooking for someone when there were no children? I considered following Henry but, embarrassingly, lacked the courage. Furthermore, no matter what happens to me, live on without losing heart. Sally, you're an independent and remarkable woman, Henry often told me. Ignoring his now final words was something I could not do. Life changed drastically after Henry passed away. I witnessed his last moments at the hospital in the middle of the night, then went straight to arrange the funeral, which proceeded smoothly. This time, being too overwhelmed to mourn or dwell on my thoughts about Henry was somewhat a relief. Many people, including my sister and her husband, encouraged me and helped prepare for the funeral, which helped me get through this month. I barely remember this period. Sally, you did a commendable job as the chief mourner. Henry must be resting in peace in heaven, assured by your strength, my sister later told me. Though everything was new and I was constantly on edge, which led to a few days of illness, it wasn't all bad. More people attended the funeral than I had anticipated. Henry had worked at a renowned company and was a senior executive, so I expected many attendees I wouldn't know. However, colleagues from the company praised Henry's character and some even shed tears. Among them were people who had traveled from overseas branches, sharing stories of going out for drinks with Henry during his business trips. It was regrettable that I couldn't spend ample time with each of them, but I made sure to note down everyone's names and addresses to send thank you notes and small tokens of appreciation later. My sister and her husband took care of these arrangements, allowing me some respite now. I'm endlessly grateful for Henry's gentle nature, which, I believe, made this possible. I want to boast about being blessed with such wonderful people, but lately, I've had doubts. Primarily because of his sister, my sister-in-law, Mary. Despite being 12 years younger than Henry, Mary is still youthful compared to women her age. Her high sense of beauty made her somewhat of a celebrity in the neighborhood. And she is well aware of it, seemingly enjoying her days enhancing her beauty. I have no issue with that. Though she's turning 58 and the appropriateness of wearing miniskirts is debatable, it's not for others to judge, so it doesn't bother me. The problem lies in her constantly making snide remarks towards me. I'm not as pretty as her, nor do I share her enthusiasm for yoga and spas. Sally, you always look so dowdy. Aren't you embarrassed? Henry was wealthy. Why didn't he marry someone more beautiful? She'd say, evaluating what I wore as if appraising my worth whenever we met. What's with using an unknown brand bag at your age? And those shoes, how long have you been wearing them? You were wearing those the last time we met, right? It's easy for me to tell when someone lacks taste, even if their clothes are nice, because it shows in their accessories. Won't Henry buy you any? He doesn't desire material things, so if you asked, he would buy them for you, wouldn't he? I have enough bags and shoes, though not as many as her. Being called sloppy is one thing, but I've never been one to hoard items. In fact, I make it a point to discard at least one old item whenever I buy something new, so my home is rather clean. Whenever Henry asked me if I wanted anything for our anniversary or my birthday, I would plan a trip without hesitation. I've always believed that memories are invaluable and cannot be bought. Now that he is gone, I'm glad I made those choices. Mary would mock me indirectly with her remarks. Henry wasn't much to look at, so in that sense, you're well suited. But you must have married him for his money, right? No matter the insult, she always concludes with this. This is the issue I have with Mary's behavior. She spreads rumors among relatives that I married Henry for his money. Apparently, there were plenty of women who approached him with that intention. He wasn't one for gambling or nightlife. His hobby was mostly fishing, so I remember being surprised by the amount of his savings when we got married. However, I never intended to splurge his wealth. At that time, I had been working for 20 years at the same company and had my own savings, though not as much as him. Sharing similar values about not spending excessively was one reason we got married, not because I was after Henry's money as Mary claims. I've tried explaining this to her and asking her to correct this misunderstanding with our relatives, but she never listens. It seems she's decided we're incompatible and constantly finds fault with me. Say has always been fiercely competitive, and Henry, during his lifetime, tried to avoid her as much as possible. This might be why she barely helped with Henry's funeral arrangements. Indeed, I was the chief mourner, but whenever Henry fell ill or was hospitalized, she would never offer words of concern, no matter how often I contacted her. On the contrary, there was a time when she got angry and said, "Don't contact me about every little thing." After that, I internally decided not to inform Henry about anything that happened. However, thinking that letting Henry know could affect his condition, I would lie gently in front of him, saying, "Mary was worried about you." In the end, she never showed herself to Henry before he passed away, so even at the wake, she maintained an attitude as if she was there out of obligation, almost as though it was someone else's problem. Yet, ever since she heard Henry was ill, she hardly had an appetite and cried so much she couldn't cry anymore. Maybe that's why she looks so down now. She said she couldn't visit the hospital because she didn't want to see Henry in a weakened state. The relatives whispered. Hearing this, I was overwhelmed with an indescribable frustration and, compounded by the shock of losing Henry, tears began to blur my vision. Mary, spoken of as a tragic heroine, had skin too radiant for someone who supposedly lost their appetite, and naturally, there were no tear stains or signs of swollen eyes. Despite telling me not to contact her, she seemed humble in front of the relatives. If my sister hadn't been there to sense my feelings and tactfully lead me away, I might have lost my composure and shouted something at the relatives. Knowing Mary could not even show respect for the deceased, I resolved to have nothing to do with her going forward. After the funeral, I gradually sorted through Henry's belongings, balancing work and household duties, and at the same time, started to regain my composure. At first, each item of Henry's that disappeared felt like erasing a memory, but I reminded myself that the memories with Henry were held most dearly in my heart. I cherished the time spent with those who attended the funeral, slowly reclaiming my tranquil life. Then, predictably, it was Mary who disrupted these peaceful days. She rang the doorbell and knocked repeatedly.
"Sally, you're there, aren't you? Your sister has come all this way, so open up,"
she called out, though I never considered her my sister. Mary raised her voice as if to perform for the neighbors. With laundry hanging outside, playing dead wasn't an option.
"What were you doing?" "I was about to get sunburnt waiting,"
she said the moment I unlocked the door, barging in without hesitation, thrusting a bag from a well-known foreign brand into my hands and beginning to remove her shoes.
"What's this all about?"
I managed to ask, to which she dramatically sighed.
"I've been so busy and couldn't visit, thinking you might be feeling down all by yourself. So, I brought something nice,"
she said, retrieving the bag she'd handed me to reveal its contents while standing. Accessories, perfume, and high-end baked goods similar to those Mary usually enjoyed, none of which seemed fitting for me. Did she really think I would be delighted to receive these? Moreover, her behavior today was unusually gentle.
"I may have been harsh on you before, but you were the woman my only brother chose. I didn't want to hand him over to a gold digger. But seeing you at the funeral made me realize you're different. Only someone who truly loved Henry could shed so many tears and give a speech with disheveled hair, disregarding what others think."
It seems she's not used to praising people. Even when she tries to appease me, she can't help but comment on my appearance or actions. However, the way she looked at me carried a sort of passion, as if she was in the presence of someone she respected. Mary's overtly changed demeanor only left me utterly bewildered, as she continued to shower me with what seemed like compliments. Despite my growing discomfort from not knowing what she truly thought. "I'm sorry. I still haven't settled the estate affairs. It's not in a state for visitors right now," I conveyed gently. Her eyes narrowed, returning to her usual cold gaze.
"Do you really think I came all this way just to see your annoying faces?"
she shouted.
"It's about the inheritance, obviously. You shouldn't have to be told that." "What?"
Confused by her gesture, indicating I should hand something over, I was at a loss.
"How long do you think I've been waiting? I have a pretty good idea of how much Henry earned, so I know roughly how much I should be getting from the inheritance. It's pointless for you to try to keep it all. Hand it over now. If you're thinking of deceiving me, I'll call a lawyer and the police."
The division of property is being handled by a lawyer, so there's no deception involved.
"Don't play dumb. I'm entitled to a share of the inheritance, aren't I?"
she yelled, her face turning red. Given that Henry and Mary were siblings, it would be natural for Mary to have a share. However, Henry often spoke about this issue, expressing his concern. Mary, known for her beauty, alongside their parents who favored her, had bullied Henry since childhood for his looks. To prove them wrong, Henry excelled academically, attended a national university through scholarships and part-time jobs, and eventually climbed the corporate ladder in a major company. The only times Henry spoke of himself were about overcoming those dark times. Naturally, anyone would be troubled at the thought of such a person receiving an inheritance. When Henry confided in me about this dilemma, I urged him to decide for himself. I only learned of Henry's decision after his passing. Unaware of this, her demeanor shifted dramatically, railing against me.
"For a daughter-in-law to almost take the entire inheritance, you're just as greedy for money. I always suspected something fishy about you marrying that plain man after 40. The only reason to spend a lifetime with someone who has no merit but his wealth. I listened patiently to your talk of love, values, and all that. Just give me half of your share right now, and I'll disappear.
It appears the sweet words and gifts were just a ploy to wrest his inheritance from me. Having been a target of her animosity for so long, I had anticipated there might be ulterior motives behind her sudden change of behavior. Witnessing her brazenly shout in the entryway, I realized just how lacking her sense of morality was. I wondered what Henry, peacefully listening from heaven, would think of all this. I told Mary to wait there for a moment, intending to show her a particular document. Upon hearing this, Mary's eyes sparkled instantly.
You really understand me. Let's go eat some delicious French cuisine with that money next time.
And she blurted out something nonsensical. Not wanting to be swept up in Mary's pace, I retrieved the document from the back room without agreeing to her plans and handed it to her.
Please, this is from Henry. You can have it,
I said as I gave her the document, Henry's last letter. Essentially his will. Mary, sensing what it was, quickly opened it. Her eyebrows, meticulously shaped, moved up and down, clearly agitated by the letter's contents.
What does this mean? I don't understand this.
Her ignorance stemmed from her own choice not to see Henry. The words almost reached my lips, but seeing Mary collapse weakly into a seat, I doubted they would reach her now. The will stated that Henry bequeathed all his possessions to me, as a final gesture of appreciation for a life shared in mutual support and love, leaving a passionately written message too private to read aloud. Reading this, I felt a renewed warmth for Henry, who thought of me even while battling his illness, making it clear Mary would receive not a cent. Despite the clear answer, Mary, unable or unwilling to accept reality.
What does this mean?
She murmured. Her face paled, and no response came from her as I half forced her out and quickly locked the door. Through the door's glass, I faintly saw Mary's shadow sway and stagger away. Feeling relieved that she wouldn't bother me again after reading the will was short-lived, the next afternoon, Mary called.
I never thought you could be such a villain, Sally. How dare you deceive me?
Her fury was palpable even over the phone, sending a chill down my spine. But I had done nothing wrong, nor did I deserve to be slandered as a villain by her. I was about to respond with renewed determination, but she cut me off.
You're probably feeling pretty good about knocking me down, aren't you? But sadly for you, you're about to experience real pain. This is your punishment for angering me. Don't think apologizing now will make me forgive you.
I could vaguely understand she was talking about the inheritance, but I had no idea what she meant by me feeling pain or apologizing. Confused and silent, perhaps she thought my silence was hesitation, as she began to laugh loudly.
See? It's too late for apologies. I'd love to visit you right now, but I have an appointment with my lawyer, so I'm busy.
Her triumphant statement made no sense to me. Why she needed a lawyer or why she felt the need to inform me about it was beyond me. Instead of bothering with me, she could have gone to her usual yoga or spa sessions, I thought idly, only to be interrupted by her yelling.
Don't you understand the situation? Talking to you is just frustrating, a real beauty killer. I'm not satisfied with the division of the estate and am preparing to sue over it. Whether you schemed in secret with your husband or not, it's inconceivable for a daughter-in-law to take everything. It's against the law. Thinking showing me Henry's will would silence me was a big mistake. To think you'd exploit a sick Henry for your gain, you have no conscience. I have a right to the inheritance, and I intend to claim it.
It seems she was under the impression I was hoarding the inheritance. By manipulating Henry to write the will in my favor, which finally broke my silence. It would be a waste of your time to go. The will was directly handed to a lawyer by Henry himself. I only read it afterwards, so there was no trickery involved. Plus, I've been informed by the lawyer that you have no claim to the inheritance. So, I think it's best if you didn't bother, as you're unlikely to be taken seriously." My calm response only angered her further, her voice growing louder.
What's with that attitude? You won't be able to act so smug for long. Just wait, I'm serious. I've been calling repeatedly since yesterday and finally got an appointment. The lawyer understood my determination. Surely, they'll be on my side and manage to get compensation from you. Just you wait.
With those words, reminiscent of a cartoon villain, she hung up. Why she called when she wouldn't listen to anything I said was beyond me. Perhaps she thought the mention of a lawyer would rattle me, enjoying the thought of my unease. Far from reflecting on not receiving a cent from her own brother, she seemed rather invigorated by her resolve to take what she believed was hers by any means necessary. Months passed without incident, and I managed to sort through Henry's study, which had been cluttered with various items. In parallel, I gradually packed up, leaving the house filled with memories of Henry and me. Henry had always wanted to retire to a quiet house in the suburbs, and I decided to fulfill that wish. Selling the house and land we lived in, I moved to an area where my sister and her husband lived, using the proceeds as a down payment. While it's regrettable we couldn't do it while Henry was alive, our dog Max, who had been with us for over 10 years, seemed to enjoy the new home. Letting go of the house meant I had far fewer belongings, but the thought of gradually making the new place comfortable brought me some hope for the future. Yet, the strange feeling of Henry's absence persisted, and the lack of furniture only seemed to amplify the loneliness. Especially when Max was sleeping, I found myself lost in thought more often than not, knowing it wasn't particularly healthy. As if interrupting my days, my smartphone suddenly blared one day. Half asleep and without checking, I answered during a TV show.
You're trying to ruin me, you curse!
It was Mary, screaming without any preamble, which instantly woke me up, though it was still unclear what she was ranting about this time. Sensing my silence, Mary didn't wait for a response before continuing.
It's your fault I'm getting divorced. The inheritance didn't come through because of you.
What? My surprised response was more out of formality. I had guessed the situation. Likely, Mary had told her husband she would receive a portion of Henry's estate, and their relationship soured when that didn't happen. A fragile marriage, to say the least. Blaming their issues on me was hardly fair.
Don't just stay quiet, apologize. Your fault I can't live properly now. What am I supposed to do all alone?
Why don't you work? You're still young in your 50s. I retorted, causing Mary to fall silent. Whether irritated by the suggestion to work or caught off guard by the mention of her age, Mary needed to face reality eventually. If you were living on your husband's salary, you shouldn't need the inheritance, right? Why did it lead to divorce?
My husband was after Henry's estate from the start. If Henry's inheritance wasn't coming through, then he had no further use for me. Despite having spent decades together, he claimed all was ruined because of me, a woman whose only assets he saw were her looks and money. He even said he wanted his time back, expressing his anger dramatically. Why should I be the one to get yelled at? My husband is a pitiful man with a low salary. I'm the one who wants my time back.
I had only met her husband at family meetings and then yearly at Christmas gatherings. Like Mary, he had a flashy impression, fond of brand-name clothes, accessories, and luxury cars. Given her mention of his low salary, it's likely they both had been eyeing Henry's wealth for some time, probably spending recklessly without any savings. Having lived lavishly on her husband's dime, Mary wasn't in a position to make claims. Marrying someone for their money and then squandering it was their own fault.
Even after consulting with a lawyer, I was turned away, told I had no claim to any inheritance. Everyone's making a fool of me. But you're the one I can't forgive. If it weren't for you, none of this would have happened.
Despite my warnings, she went to the lawyer, only to face the embarrassment I predicted.
Sally, you must have brainwashed my husband, right? He said he should have married someone like you. Why does he mention your name? You must have seduced him behind my back. That's the only explanation.
Why would you think that? I don't even have his contact information.
Lies. He's never praised a dowdy middle-aged woman before. You must have seduced him and had an affair. Confess, and if you give me the inheritance, I might forgive you.
This is nonsensical. Frustrated by her baseless accusations, I ended the call. The house was already being demolished, and the land was sold, so she couldn't come after me there. I hadn't given her my new address, making future encounters nearly impossible. Just to be sure, I blocked her number, determined to live peacefully. Half a year passed, and Max adapted well to our new life. My sister and I went out to eat once or twice a month, enjoying our days. My recent health checkup showed no issues, and the local shops provided convenience, leaving little to worry about except for that phone call a few months back. Mary, having divorced and depleted her savings, apparently sought welfare support at the social welfare office. During her visit, she was told that if she had relatives who could support her, she would not be eligible for assistance. The relatives who once praised Mary all refused to help with her living expenses, likely aware of her history of lavish spending. This led to her being isolated from her relatives. A caseworker then contacted me, but of course, I had no intention of helping. Considering how she and her ex-husband had approached us with financial motives and her disrespectful behavior even at the funeral, I felt no obligation to assist her now. Despite her accusations of me being money-minded, it was Mary who had succumbed to her own greed. I'm unaware of her current situation. Rumors suggest she quickly lost a job she had found due to conflicts, or that her neighbors noticed her ex-husband's absence, deducing their divorce and her subsequent move. No one seems to know where or how Mary is living now, and I've lost interest over time. Regaining my peace of mind, I cherished my time with Max more than ever. Max, who was always gentle like Henry, became even quieter with age, which worried me. My sister, a longtime dog lover who adored Max, surprisingly acquired a puppy one day. Excited, I visited my sister's family, greeted by a small Shiba Inu. Max, immediately taken by the puppy, watched it play joyously. I hoped the puppy would become a good friend for Max, smiling at the heartwarming scene. This time, give the baby to your brother. You can just have another one. After I announced my pregnancy to my parents, my mother uttered those unbelievable words. Brother Zach and his wife Rosie, who is infertile, demanded that I give up my child for adoption to them. My parents have always prioritized Zach over everything and neglected me. The hopeful future I had envisioned upon conceiving my first child turned into despair. My name is Olivia. I've been married to my husband Walt for 3 years. Our marriage is great, and we've been talking like we want a child soon. However, I've kept some distance from my family home. The reason lies with my parents and my brother Zach. At the family home, my parents, Zach, and his wife Rosie lived together. Zach was a prodigy since childhood and graduated from a prestigious university. He now secured a job at a major corporation. He is set to join and eventually take over our father's company. Our parents have adored him since he was young. In comparison, I wasn't very smart and had average looks, so I don't have many memories of being cherished by our parents. From a young age, I was always confused by the difference in treatment between Zach and me, often feeling down alone. Especially our mother, she was always with him, clearly showing he was her favorite. As for me, she mostly ignored me. When she did talk, it was usually to put me down. Perhaps influenced by our parents, Zach looked down on me too, so we never had a good sibling relationship. I felt I had no place at home and grew increasingly isolated. For those reasons, as soon as I graduated high school, I left home. My parents, seemingly uninterested in me, didn't say much when I announced my departure. In fact, they seemed almost pleased. After leaving, I got a job. And 3 years later, I married Walt, who was a classmate from high school. I was eager to build my own family and find my peace, away from the influence of my family. I only return home for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'd rather not go, but my parents insist. They worry about appearances, and a daughter who never visits would look bad. They make a fuss if I don't go, so I endure it and visit twice a year. I went back grudgingly this Thanksgiving, but my mother was as cold as ever.
You and your husband are still so unimpressive.
It ruins the festive mood. She started with her sarcasm right away. She called us back only to say such things. If she's going to be like this, she shouldn't bother calling. I thought, while fending off her sarcasm, but her barbs continued. We're worried about you. You two live in poverty. We always think you'll come begging for money. My family home is quite wealthy. But since leaving, I've never asked for financial help and have been living off our own earnings with Walt. We manage a decent life and even celebrate their birthdays properly.
There's no way we would do that.
I immediately responded to her baseless accusation. However, she blurted out,
"But you two are still low income, aren't you?"
And then shifted her gaze to Walt beside me.
"Walt, you're still working at that detective agency, right? How long do you plan to keep doing that shady business? Don't you feel embarrassed?"
Indeed, Walt works as a detective, something she always ridicules. She sees detective work as shady and inferior to regular jobs. While Walt was explaining his job to make it understandable for her, Zach chimed in.
"Mom, it's pointless to even listen to that. Detective work is shady, something nobody wants to get involved in. It's a low-level job done by people beneath us. The salary must be nothing compared to mine."
Flaunting his elitism, Zach looked down on detective work, just like her. That is something we've been hearing since we got married. Walt remained silent, but I felt angry that his job was being completely dismissed. Walt has been my confidant since our student days, so he understands what my family is like. Therefore, he always accompanies me when we have to visit my parents, not wanting to leave me alone. Even though he knows he'll be subjected to unpleasantness, I still feel terribly guilty. This visit, like others, ended up being an unpleasant experience. We resolved to live modestly together, not bothered by my family. Around that time, something wonderful happened. In our 3rd year of marriage, I finally became pregnant. I was overjoyed to be expecting our first child. Considering the way my parents always disparaged me, I felt I couldn't keep my pregnancy a secret from them. So, I visited my family home to announce it. It had been a while since I visited outside of Thanksgiving and Christmas, and my parents, Zach, and his wife Rosie were there. The response to my announcement was unexpected. Upon hearing my news, my mother suddenly raised her voice.
"How dare you say such a thing in front of Zach?"
I was surprised by her reaction. I hadn't expected congratulations, but this was unexpected. I was puzzled by her reference to Zach, and as I tilted my head in confusion, she revealed a shocking truth.
"Zach can't have children, due to Rosie's constitution. How could you be so insensitive with your announcement?"
I had no idea that they were infertile. Stunned by her unexpected words, I turned to look at the two. Zach looked uncomfortable and resigned. Meanwhile, Rosie was looking down solemnly.
"You dare have a child before Zach. If it weren't for Rosie, this wouldn't have happened."
She sighed dramatically, glancing back and forth between Rosie and me. Observing that, Zach intervened. "You know, Rosie feels guilty enough as it is. Don't be too hard on her, Mom." I was a bit surprised to hear he defend Rosie. From my occasional visits, I knew that his attitude towards Rosie was never that kind.
"You're really kind, Zach. Rosie, if it weren't for being Zach's wife, you'd have been divorced long ago."
Hearing Zach's words, our mother glared at Rosie. Indeed, knowing them, they might have divorced Rosie immediately upon learning of her infertility. But perhaps Zach does have some affection for his wife. I pondered that as I watched he calm our mother down.
"Well, I've made my announcement, so I'll be heading home."
The atmosphere had turned to blaming Rosie because of my announcement, so I decided to leave quickly. But then, my mother turned to me and said something unbelievable.
"The baby you're having, give it to Zach."
What? I couldn't help but exclaim in shock at her outrageous suggestion. What does she mean, give my baby to Zach?
"You can have another child since you're capable of having one. Since Rosie seems unable to. So giving that baby to Zach as an adopted child will bring peace to our family."
Peace? What is she talking about? How could they think of taking my baby for him, just because he can't have children? That's absurd and unjustifiable. When I insisted I would never agree to such a thing, my mother retorted,
"Look, this is our long-awaited first grandchild. I'll let it grow around me. It's only right that we get to raise it. Zach will take over the company, so we will raise the baby."
She made such infuriating arguments, planning to take away my unborn child just to ensure a successor for our father's company. She talked about the process of adoption as if she had researched it, but I was too furious to listen. Seeing how irritated I was, Zach added something unbelievable. "Well, since Rosie can't have children, it's good for her that you got pregnant at this time. At least you're finally contributing to this family." I couldn't believe it, but Zach seemed to agree with her. Even our father, who usually says nothing, nodded in agreement from behind them. It seemed the whole family was ready to claim my baby as their own. I couldn't believe how casually Zach spoke such terrible words to his own wife, acting as if nothing was wrong. Realizing that talking further was pointless, I decided to leave immediately. They only said, "Make sure to give us an answer next time you come," and didn't even come out to see me off. Only Rosie, who must have been deeply hurt, silently saw me off. Even after returning home, my anger didn't subside. Far from celebrating my pregnancy, they made an unreasonable and absurd demand. Thinking about the future made me feel gloomy. They would probably keep pushing for adoption after the baby was born. Walt was also shocked when he heard the story from me after returning from work. Even he was at a loss for words. He understands my family, but the situation being beyond belief. A few days later, we had an unexpected visitor at home. "What brings you here so suddenly? It's rare to see you alone." It was Rosie. She looked haggard, her skin lacked luster, and her hair was disheveled. As she looked at us, her eyes brimmed with tears. "Olivia, I'm so sorry about the other day." She must be referring to when I went to announce my pregnancy. It wasn't her fault though. She seemed to feel guilty about the unreasonable demands made by my family. Then, she began to speak about something unexpected. "Actually, I have something I want to talk to you about." What could it be? I invited her in to hear her out. What she revealed was shocking, and my anger surged again. Trying hard to suppress her anger, she calmly told me a significant truth. Walt had been quietly listening to our conversation, but spoke up as our talk wound down, saying, "Actually," and revealed information to me. It was as astonishing and infuriating as Rosie's confession. Although Rosie had been listening to Walt's story, her teared up again. Having been informed of this significant fact by Walt and Rosie, I made a decision. To punish my parents and Zach. I swore to myself to settle past grievances and seek revenge. 3 months later, my belly beginning to show, I visited my family home with Walt. There were my parents, Zach, and Rosie.
"You've decided to give the baby to Zach, right?"
My mother asked, without even a greeting. It seemed she could only think of my baby being adopted by Zach.
"I told you before, that's not going to happen."
As I responded, my parents glared at me, as if they couldn't accept it.
"No matter what you say, we're taking that baby. Stop being so stubborn."
My mother appeared infuriated by my resistance. Feeling the same way, Zach and my father just glared at me without stopping her.
"No matter how much you yell, I will never give the baby away. Instead, I came today to show something to you guys. Is that okay, Rosie?"
I said, then made eye contact with Rosie. She nodded, still looking into my eyes.
"Rosie intends to divorce Zach. And the reason is this."
I pulled several photos from an envelope I had brought. That was my purpose for coming today.
"These are..."
Seeing the photos, Zach was speechless. The photos showed Zach kissing another woman and entering a hotel, undeniable evidence of his infidelity. Apparently shocked to have been photographed, he muttered just one sentence.
Who the hell took these photos?
Our parents, standing next to Zach, looked bewildered and alternated their gaze between him and me. They probably had no idea that he was having an affair.
It was Walt who took these.
What?
Yes, Walt had taken the photos. Walt had been silently watching that unfold, but began to explain how he came to take the photos. As a detective, he had incidentally seen Zach walking in downtown with an unknown woman while investigating a case. Out of curiosity, he conducted his own investigation and discovered that Zach was having an affair with that woman by pretending to be single. The decisive moment was captured in those photos. Zach seemed to think he had cleverly kept his affair secret. He was dumbfounded and at a loss for words.
Adultery is a valid reason for divorce. Make sure you pay Rosie a proper compensation.
Amidst the tense atmosphere, Zach spoke.
I got stuck with a wife who's so incompetent. It's okay to have a little fun outside, right?
Rosie and I were speechless. Instead of apologizing, he blamed Rosie for his infidelity.
That's right, you're right. Rosie, it's because you're incompetent. To think you're acting all high and mighty about divorce.
Our mother joined in, supporting his retort. They were desperately trying to blame Rosie, probably not wanting to be at a disadvantage themselves. I guess after I left, she must have been treated coldly by this family, just like I was. Thinking about it made me feel terribly sorry for her. Therefore, I decided to confront this family today. To save myself and Rosie, who had been neglected all that time, I pushed them further into a corner by blaming Rosie.
Zach, you made fun of Walt, but the investigative skills of a professional detective are extraordinary. As soon as he started investigating, evidence kept piling up. And then, we found out something shocking about your mistress.
Saying that, I saw my parents tensing up, wondering what shocking fact would come out next.
The woman you're having an affair with seems to be the daughter of a mafia boss.
As soon as I revealed it, Zach stiffened as if frozen. He must not have known that. Immediately, my mother screamed.
What? Is that true?
Her beloved son's mistress being the daughter of a mafia boss. Upon knowing the full extent of the shocking truth, she collapsed to the ground, covering her face with both hands. My father also pressed his head with both hands, as if he had heard something terrifying.
Zach, you were pretending to be single while dating her, correct?
Right, he had hidden his marital status to have an affair with the woman.
If she finds out that she's been deceived by a married man, what do you think will happen? What will her parents do when they learn their daughter was tricked by a married man? It would be better to tell them, right?
With my threatening words, now clearly realizing the identity of the woman he had been deceiving, Zach started to panic.
No! I didn't know either. I was deceived too.
Our parents, domineering just a moment ago, were now completely confused by this unforeseen revelation. Then, Rosie began to speak in front of the flustered.
You didn't just deceive your mistress, did you?
With her words, tension returned to the room. Then, she repeated what she had told me during her visit. You are infertile, aren't you? At that moment, Zach's face showed an "oh no" expression. Our parents looked at him in shock. They had blamed Rosie for not being able to have a baby, but the cause was actually Zach himself.
Did you know, Rosie?
That was all he could manage to say. The stunned parents were visibly shaken by the harsh impact. As they struggled to find their next words, Rosie delivered the final blow.
I found it accidentally while cleaning the room.
Rosie had stumbled upon his infertility diagnosis, hidden in his desk drawer. He couldn't admit that to his doting parents, so he kept that fact a secret and blamed infertility on Rosie. Believing his words, our parents had blamed Rosie. His protective comments about Rosie when I announced my pregnancy were probably due to his guilt over the issue.
Being blamed for not being able to have a baby, I suffered every day. And the talk turned to taking Olivia's child. I was just so sad.
Rosie declared that with a calm and unchanged expression. In contrast, my parents had just learned the shocking truth and were in a panic.
To think Zach will never have a baby, that's just...
My mother was despairing at the reality of not being able to hold his child. But in the next moment, she turned her hysterical hatred towards him.
You knew it was your fault, yet you pushed all the blame onto your wife. Did you cheat with other women just because you knew you were infertile? How could my son be so low? Oh dear, why did this happen?
She vented her frustration at him. Hearing it, he finally spoke and started his pitiful explanation.
I was shocked to find out I was infertile. I felt guilty for not giving you two a grandchild. When I found out Olivia was pregnant with a boy, it just seemed convenient.
It was a story that made me feel utterly contemptuous. Shaking off my anger, I delivered the final blow to the three.
Your selfish actions hurt Rosie and me. Besides, you have an affair with such a dangerous person. Zach, Mom, and Dad, you all better brace yourselves for what's coming. You guys have hurt so many people, now you'll get what you deserve.
Hearing my words, they started apologizing to us, their earlier bravado gone. Where did the momentum go when you asked me to give up my son? I looked at the three of them with disdain, like looking at trash. Beside me, Rosie said nothing and just stared ahead. Her silence spoke volumes about the depth of her sorrow. Zach and my parents were in for tough times ahead. The father of Zach's mistress learned about the affair, and the three of them were summoned and had to apologize repeatedly. Although they managed to break off the affair, Zach was forced to pay a hefty compensation because he had deceived the woman. The amount was staggering, and they learned the hard way the dangers of entanglement with such people. Because of that, my family home soon fell into disarray. My father was forced to resign as company president due to the public scandal. My mother became isolated, seen with disdain by the neighbors, and withdrew into herself. The relationship between my parents became hostile, constantly arguing over Zach. Zach was forced to leave his job after the scandal leaked to his company. As if to add insult to injury, his divorce with Rosie was finalized. Losing his job and having to pay compensation to Rosie, Zach was trapped in a life of relentless work. Around the time Rosie successfully left the family home, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Both the baby and I were in good health, and I savored the joy of welcoming a new life. The happy days for our family of three began. Then, Walt and I decided to cut all ties with my family. I had been torn about severing ties with such parents and brother, but that incident made me realize it was best for my son. Even without them, I have an irreplaceable family now. I've decided to cherish only my precious family from now on.
I'll give you a kid with developmental disabilities.
Scarlett, my son's arrogant wife, said to me. A strong hatred for her stirring up inside me. She doesn't love her own children. She only sees them as tools for making money. My anger towards her reached its peak, and I decided to take my grandchild away from her.
Then, I'll raise her.
I set the condition that she would never be involved with her child again, and arranged for an adoption. 10 years later, Scarlett, triggered by a certain event, came to regret her choices. My name is Grace. I work as a proofreader. A proofreader is someone who checks for errors in manuscripts and layout prints at publishing companies, like for books and magazines. My husband, Henry, is a film director. He's made a name for himself as a capable director, having worked on a wide range of projects from animations to suspense and horror films. We, a creative couple, had one son. He grew up splendidly, found a wonderful wife, and got married. They were blessed with children. But soon after the marriage, our son tragically died in an accident. Losing our only son, Henry and I were engulfed in sorrow. But perhaps it was even harder for Scarlett, our son's wife. At the young age of 33, she became a widow and raised her two daughters by herself. Moreover, the girls were twins, and the younger one, Mia, showed signs of developmental disabilities. Her sister is Emma. At the time, Mia's condition was diagnosed as mild, but as she grew, her symptoms became more evident, and now she attends a special education class at the same elementary school as Emma. Raising a child with disabilities is no ordinary task. Especially for Scarlett, who lost her husband so early, her days must be incredibly hard. Of course, my husband and I try to support her in every way we can. She has a job, so during times like evenings when she can't take care of the kids, we take them in. Still, the hardships she's faced since our son's death are unimaginable. I am grateful to her. She truly cared for her children. Until she became obsessed with a certain man. Her personality changed after meeting this man.
Grace, I'm taking Emma to her piano class, so I'll drop Mia off at your place. I should be there in about 5 minutes.
That was a sudden, unexpected call. Previously, Scarlett used to check my schedule and show consideration, but lately, it's always been abrupt. She might know her piano class schedule in advance, yet she calls out of the blue, wanting to drop off Mia without any prior discussion. It's not just inconvenient for me, but for Henry as well, who has his own work.
Scarlett, I think it's admirable how much you care for Emma. But if you're going to ask us to take Mia in suddenly every time, we have our own schedules too.
Wait, aren't you off today, Grace?
I saw on the calendar that you have every Tuesday off this month.
Scarlett knew everything about our work and home schedule, as she often brought the kids over. It felt invasive, like being monitored.
There are things we can only do on our days off. Please, don't just leave the kids with us without discussing it first. It's not that we don't want to take them. It's just a bit troublesome without any prior notice.
I understand. I'll be more careful from now on. There was a brief pause, and Scarlett's reply sounded listless. Accompanying her perfunctory response was a faint clicking of her tongue. Before I could respond, she abruptly ended the call. Soon after, I heard Scarlett's car parking outside. Suppressing my exasperation, I got up from my chair to head to the door. Then, I overheard an unbelievable remark from the entrance.
Mia, just go on to Grandma's by yourself.
From the entrance, I heard Scarlett's condescending voice speaking to Mia, leaving me shocked and speechless. Moreover, I only heard the sound of the door opening once. Meaning, Scarlett didn't even get out of the car, she just told Mia something and then drove off again. Surprised by this unbelievable situation, I hurried to the entrance and found Mia left there alone.
Mia. Where's your mom? Where did she go?
Mia, not understanding the situation, looked at me with a puzzled expression. I placed my hands on Mia's shoulders, asking her what happened, but she just kept staring at me, puzzled, not attempting to answer my question.
Grandma. Good evening.
Mia is in elementary school, but she's delayed in speech, only able to communicate in 2-word sentences. She can't answer complicated questions, and when bombarded with them, she tends to get stuck. At this moment, not understanding my question, Mia, contrary to my anxious mood, just smiled sweetly and continued to look at me.
Mia, where did your mom go? Shopping? Piano class? Which one?
When speaking to her, I know I shouldn't get emotional. If I convey words in haste, she also gets affected and may panic. I took a deep breath to calm myself and, showing my fists alternately with my hands, I tried to make it easier for Mia to choose an answer. Thanks to that, she seemed to understand the question and pointed to the right fist I held out secondly, uttering surprising words.
Piano. Went with Emma and a man.
A man. Hearing this intriguing word, I impulsively asked her more questions.
Is he Mom's friend? Emma's friend?
No. Mom's favorite person. Seeing her talk happily made my heart ache. Scarlett left a daughter behind to go to Emma's piano class with a new man. But why leave only Mia? The answer would soon become clear. That night, after piano class was over and it was getting time for Scarlett to pick Mia up, she didn't show up at our house. Fortunately, the next day was Saturday, so having Mia stay over wasn't a problem, but it was still incredibly rude. Scarlett left her with us without any notice. What's happening to her? I kept repeating these complaints in my mind while waiting with Mia for Scarlett to pick her up. Little did I know then, Scarlett's life was spiraling out of control.
Hello, Grace? Sorry, but could you let Mia stay over tonight? Emma has come down with a fever.
I don't want Mia to catch it, so could you look after her? It was past 9 p.m. I had finished giving Mia a shower and dinner, and was just waiting for Scarlett to pick her up when she called. Scarlett's voice on the phone didn't sound hurried, just apologetically casual. If I hadn't known the situation from Mia, I might not have doubted her words. But, having heard Mia's earlier story, I couldn't easily believe Scarlett. All right. We'll take care of her tonight. Realizing my reluctance, Henry, who was playing with Mia, turned to me and said so with a stern expression. I relayed to Scarlett that we would take care of Mia just for tonight. I understand the situation. But you knew about this sooner, right? How many hours has it been since piano class ended? Sorry. I was just about to pick her up when she started looking unwell. I'll be more careful next time. Her nonchalant reply only increased my anger. From now on, please make sure to contact us in advance. If not, we might find it difficult to take her in the future. Yes. Thank you so much. She responded sweetly and ended the call unilaterally. Dumbfounded and speechless, I returned to Mia and Henry, and that's when things got tough. Mia, how about spending today with Grandpa and Grandma? Your mom can't pick you up because she's taking care of Emma who's sick. Maybe the way I said it was not good. Mia, having already decided in her mind that she was going home, got upset when her routine was disrupted. Mia, in a state of panic, began to wander restlessly around, crying and repeating that she wanted to go home. She curled up on the spot, trying to calm herself down, but it seemed she couldn't switch off her emotions. Sitting down, then standing up, repeating this over and over, she eventually collapsed onto a nearby sofa and started to cry intensely. I'm sorry, it's my fault. It's okay. Let's just be there for Mia right now. We've encountered situations like this several times before. When she was younger, her tantrums were much worse, becoming so violent that she was uncontrollable. She would hit herself against walls or slap her hands on the floor, a far worse state compared to now. As she grew, perhaps maturing, her symptoms seemed to stabilize, now manifesting as crying intensely on the sofa. When Mia gets like this, both Henry and I stay by her side, never intervening or trying to do anything forceful. Mia, in her way of calming down, uses our hands to wipe her tears, seeking comfort through physical touch. But we don't initiate it. Mia has her own timing and needs. We've learned over these 6 years it's important to respond to her in that manner. I'm sorry. When Mia calms down, she always apologizes to us, perhaps thinking she'll be scolded for crying. Her eyes, wet with tears, stare at us, trembling with fear. At that moment, we had no idea that this behavior was a result of Scarlett's treatment. We're not mad at you. In fact, I'm sorry, Mia. I said something hard to you. Good girl, good girl. Though she might not understand my words, she seemed to read my emotions from my expression. Mia, kneeling in front of me, gently stroked my hair. Even if her words are limited, her heart is so kind. What does a disability matter? It's just a part of who she is, her unique character. I love this gentle side of her. Thinking this and smiling, I heard Henry's voice suggesting it's time to sleep, and Mia, now ready to switch to bedtime mode, happily went with Henry to the bedroom. The next morning, a grim-faced Emma and Scarlett in a slovenly outfit arrived. Thank you for yesterday. Emma's fever seems to have gone after sleeping all night, which really helped. Scarlett said in a manner as if a heart emoji should be at the end of her sentence, without a hint of remorse. Next to her, Emma looked upset for some reason. Curious, I was about to speak, but Mia, seeing her mother, lit up and rushed to embrace her, leaving me with no choice but to keep quiet. Mom, you're back. Mia. I'm back, let's go home. Scarlett spoke to Mia as she hugged her. At that moment, I felt something off in Scarlett's smile. For a brief moment, it seemed like a look of laziness towards Mia. It was so brief that I couldn't be sure. Was it just my frustration from yesterday making me see things, or was there really something off? Unsure of the fleeting feeling, I couldn't confront her about it. Then, we'll visit again soon. As Scarlett said this and took Mia's hand heading to the car, an angry-looking Emma handed me a letter. "Read this after we leave," Emma whispered, passing me the letter discreetly, making sure Scarlett didn't hear. Sensing something was seriously wrong, I took the letter without asking any further questions. After Scarlett left, I called Henry into the living room, and we read Emma's letter together. It contained shocking information.
Mom changed after finding a new boyfriend. She's hardly home and gives money to this man. She's using the prize money I won from a piano competition and a concert to pay him. She's leaving Mia with Grandma and Grandpa because this man has started to dislike Mia and finds her annoying. She sees me as a tool to earn money through piano. Soon, Mom might push Mia onto Grandma and Grandpa permanently. I'm okay, but please look after Mia.
I was stunned and speechless at the unbelievable content of the letter, and at the end of it, I noticed what appeared to be a mobile phone email address. I remembered Scarlett mentioning that Emma's piano talents blossomed when she entered elementary school and that her lessons had become busier. Emma, even as a young child, had gained media attention for her skills and had now become a piano prodigy, attracting nationwide attention. Things have become rather dangerous lately, so I decided to give her a mobile phone. It seems normal these days for elementary school kids to have one, and I thought it wouldn't be a problem. If she's receiving media attention, it's a natural concern and precaution for a parent to have. I remember hearing this story and thinking how times have changed. This email address must belong to Emma's mobile phone. Emma is quite a smart girl. If she's written down her mobile phone address, it means she isn't being monitored by Scarlett. It must be safe to contact her there. Believing this to be Emma's address, I decided to reach out. "Good evening. Is this Emma's address?"
Yes, it's me. Thanks for reading my letter. Grandma, please help Mia.
I received this reply after 10 p.m. Probably just as she was going to bed. I then exchanged several messages with Emma. "Tell me more about what's happening. Make sure to delete our messages afterward."
Of course. I wasn't really sick yesterday. It was all a lie so Mom could go see her boyfriend. I was left at a friend's house, and Mom went out with him. He seems to be in a band, and Mom's always following him around. She's using the money I earn from piano competitions to spend time with him. I don't really mind, but Mia, she's treated terribly at home. Mia doesn't understand and always smiles, but after being scolded, she cries a lot and is inconsolable. Mom prioritizes her boyfriend over us now. She's happy when I give her money. But as long as Mia is around, Mom will continue to treat her horribly. The boyfriend even said to leave Mia with you and Grandpa. Mia might be happier with you. So please, help Mia. I'll do anything for her. Reading the message to the end, I couldn't stop my tears. Such a young girl, only 6 years old, desperately trying to protect her sister. Especially since she's the same age as her. Sacrificing herself without a second thought. What a terrible mother to make such a young child feel this way. What are you planning to do? You could be in danger too. I'll be okay. Mom needs me as long as I can play the piano. If it gets too much, I'll threaten to quit. I want to become better at piano. If that means using them to my advantage. That man seems well connected in the industry, so I'll use that to my advantage. So don't worry about me. But please, take care of Mia. I can't protect her. Can she really be only 6 years old? Her maturity made me feel her strength. But we never know what might happen. Not to overdo it, to rely on us if things get tough. And to keep in touch without fail. And be careful not to lose contact. I promised her 3 things. I agreed to help Emma. A month later, Scarlett's irresponsible behavior continued, and we were constantly being inconvenienced. But we couldn't let anything happen to Mia. We even started to say that we wanted to take care of Mia ourselves to protect her and keep our promise to Emma. One day, Scarlett came to our house with Mia,
asking for a favor. I might be going abroad soon. What? Henry, listening with me, also looked shocked. Emma's piano teacher thinks highly of her talent. She might get to study with a famous teacher in Italy. If she does well there, she'll become a world-famous pianist. That's why I came to ask if you could take care of Mia. It's impossible to take her abroad. I couldn't help but doubt Scarlett's story. Emma hadn't mentioned anything like this. There was no reason for her to keep such a big secret. I stared at Scarlett suspiciously. Can you take Mia upstairs? I need to talk to Scarlett alone. Henry seemed to understand from my expression. He took Mia and left the living room. Tell me the truth. What? Emma going abroad, such a sudden decision isn't plausible, is it? Also, the last time you left Mia with us, a friend of mine saw you walking around town with a man. If you keep hiding the truth unnecessarily, I'll have to take appropriate action. What's the real reason? Tell me the truth. The story about a friend spotting her was a lie. But I thought it necessary to shake her up. Fooled by my words, Scarlett revealed her true colors. If you already knew everything, you should have said so earlier. There was no need for such an act. What? Her sudden change in demeanor took me by surprise. Her tone and attitude were so unbelievable that I couldn't see her as the kind Scarlett I knew. To be clear, Mia is a nuisance. Just saying she has a developmental disability lowers my chances of remarrying significantly. Emma's success does offset that to some extent, but being a mother of a child with disabilities, nobody wants to associate with me. So, for my and Emma's happiness, I want you to take Mia. It's better for Emma to have a father, right? It would be good for my mental health too. Scarlett spoke nonchalantly, without a hint of remorse. I was speechless, unable to comprehend her words. She said something even more surprising. In short, I'm giving Mia to you. Emma is all I need. You are happy about having a grandchild, so it works out perfectly, right? She talked about Mia being a useless burden and a financial strain, laughing. I couldn't recognize her as a human being. Mia still loves her as a mother. Mia, so pure and earnest, loves her mother despite the terrible treatment. Thinking of Mia's feelings made me furious at Scarlett's attitude and words. But I didn't want to argue. For us, Mia is a precious remnant of our son. Rather than being raised by such a worthless parent, we wanted to take care of her and make her happy. Calming myself, I responded to her words. Then, I'll raise her. In return, you'll never see Mia again. I'll tell her that her mother has passed away. For her sake, never call yourself her mother again. Don't ever show up in front of her. Yeah. Do whatever you want. I'm happy to get rid of such a useless child. Scarlett said this, stretched her arms out wide as if relieved. And left our house without telling Mia anything. Thus, Mia came to live with us as our adopted daughter. Of course, the first few months were tumultuous. Mia was distraught over her mother's absence, causing a great deal of mental strain. We reached out to doctor acquaintances, invited specialists to our home, and collaborated with therapeutic institutions, focusing on her support. Thanks to that, a few months later, Mia returned to school and was able to live a more settled life. 10 years later. When Mia was in her first year of high school, an incident occurred. One afternoon, someone repeatedly rang our doorbell. It was a holiday, and we were spending time together as a family. Who could it be, ringing the bell so many times? Irritated by the rude visit, I went to the door and grimaced when I saw who it was through the peephole. I know you're there. Come out. Give back Mia, you thieving family. There stood Scarlett, whom we had cut ties with 10 years ago, and a flamboyantly dressed man. Possibly he is the boyfriend from the rumors. What's going on? The front door seems noisy. Henry. Scarlett found our house and has come to visit suddenly. What? We had moved to change our lives after cutting ties with Scarlett. We bought a place convenient for our jobs, never expecting she would find us. Henry and I exchanged looks, wondering what to do. "It's okay, Grandma, Grandpa. Let them in. I want to settle things with that person." Mia was now 16. Her developmental disability had stabilized, and she could communicate normally. Though she still had intense fixations and could get absorbed in things, these traits helped her succeed in a certain venture.
"You're late. If you're inside, just let us in quickly."
Scarlett had changed into a completely different person from the one who used to live with our son. As soon as she entered our house, she sat down next to a man on the sofa, crossing her arms and legs in an arrogant manner and glaring at us, clearly in a bad mood. Though her attitude was irksome, reacting to her provocations would only play into her hands. We took a deep breath to maintain our calm, sat across from her, and asked what this was all about.
"You have no business bringing strangers into my house. What do you want now, after cutting ties with me 10 years ago?"
Mia was sitting at a nearby workbench, busy with some writing. Fortunately, when she's in this focused mode, she doesn't hear anything around her. Knowing she wouldn't be bothered by our argument, we were told to have our discussion here. Glancing sideways at Mia, Scarlett smirked and arrogantly declared,
"It's simple. I've come to take Mia back. She's my daughter, so it's my right to have her back, isn't it?"
What is this woman talking about? Has she forgotten what she said that day, 10 years ago? Lost for words at Scarlett's absurd thinking, a stern-looking Henry addressed her in a low voice.
"You said you didn't want Mia and discarded her. We told Mia her mother was dead, and that should have been the end of it. That was just a verbal agreement. Besides, Mia knows I'm alive through the letters I sent her, right? If her mother is alive, there's no reason for us to live apart."
Scarlett's defiant reply was infuriating. She had bombarded our home with letters once she learned of Mia's talent and even showed up at her school to make her presence known.
"Do you have any idea how much pain your selfish actions have caused Mia?"
Scarlett's actions had recklessly stirred up Mia's emotions. Believing her mother was dead, Mia was so disturbed by this revelation that she couldn't even go to school for a while. However, thanks to her friends and a certain child, she gradually recovered and was able to return to her normal life.
"I'm telling you, I'll take proper care of her from now on. So hand over Mia to me. Enough already."
Scarlett, eager to justify herself and demand Mia's return, was interrupted by Mia herself. Mia threw a pen at near Scarlett's face, and she stepped up to Scarlett, shaking her fist in anger.
"You never cared about me. You dumped me with Grandma and others because I was in the way of your time with that man. And now you claim to be a mother? Don't make me laugh. To me, you're not a mother at all."
We could never have imagined she would speak like this when she was little. She used to accept everything her mother did with a smile, never showing anger. But living with us, Mia had changed. She developed a rich emotional life, and thanks to therapy, her teachers, and friends, she learned to express herself. She even learned to distinguish right from wrong. In defiance of her mother, who had abandoned her, Mia honed a particular talent. So, she must not forgive Scarlett, who had chose the man getting along well over her. Scarlett didn't know how much I understood about Mia. She also didn't realize that she was being betrayed by a certain child.
"You're just greedy for money. I knew you'd show up sooner or later. After all, you know I'm the author of that movie."
At those words, Scarlett's face showed a flicker of unease. After we took her in, we had Mia try various things. Scarlett had made Mia play the piano like Emma, but it wasn't for Mia. That was the real reason she considered abandoning Mia. We had heard about this from a certain child and encouraged Mia to explore her interests and take her to places she wanted to visit. As a result, Mia discovered a talent for something special. It was drawing. She had an exceptional artistic sense. Her imagination was beyond our expectations. As Henry and I, both of whom work in animation, recognize her excellent work. I tried showing it to a certain author. We even showed her work to a famous industry figure, who has an award named after him. His high praise led to her drawings being immediately adopted by my company's editorial department. She demonstrates stellar performance in drawing, which was made into an animated TV series and films in a flash.
Now, I'm worth more than Emma. You thought you could use me to pay off the money you spent on that man and your ballooning gambling debts, didn't you? Too bad. I know all about your wrongdoings. Who would want to go back to a terrible parent like you now? Get out. My real parents are Grandpa, Grandma, and Dad.
Scarlett was shaken by these unexpected words from Mia. Why did she know everything? We hadn't even talked about it, so how did she find out? In the midst of confusion and agitation, the man next to her was showing anger at being yelled at.
What are you saying to mother who gave birth to you? Did I ask to be born? You gave birth to me, abandoned me, and now you come back for your own convenience. I don't want to hear mother from someone who's only interested in money. Who would go back to a greedy woman like you? Get out now. Just the thought of you makes me sick.
Scarlett was speechless from the shock and surprise of being defied. The man next to her stood up in anger, about to grab her. Just as we stood up to stop him, a voice came from the living room entrance.
If you do that, I'll show this video to the police and have you thrown in jail right now.
Everyone turned to see Emma at the entrance, holding her mobile phone camera. She was supposed to be in Italy.
Why is Emma here? Isn't she in Italy? I asked my teacher to reschedule my lessons. I thought you'd try to get in touch with Mia while I was away and bring her back to our house. I'm glad I kept in touch with her beforehand. As I thought, you came to Grandma and Grandpa's place.
Emma said this and walked next to Mia, filming the man to protect him. Emma had explained everything to Mia and had always been there to protect her. She continued to use the man next to Scarlett. With his knowledge of the music industry, she might be able to meet the foreign pianist she admired. She wouldn't spare money to fulfill her dream. And she had a plan to leave Scarlett when the time came.
This is my investment to fulfill my dream. It's not hard at all. They're so stupid. They don't know I'm secretly having Grandma manage the money. The reward money I give them is just a fraction, so don't worry.
Emma, now a middle school student, began studying about money and law. She had grown up to be as knowledgeable as an adult, talking about her family's situation at work and getting full support from the office. Thanks to that, Emma's bank account had enough savings to live on her own. She was finally ready for settling in Italy, which has been her long-cherished dream leaving Scarlett, so she talked to Mia about it in advance.
I've been adopted by Grandma and Grandpa too. What?
Scarlett was visibly confused by this unexpected turn of events. The man next to her hadn't anticipated this either. In a panic, he pressed Scarlett about what to do.
After all the good times I've given you, you should be satisfied by now. I don't need trash like you around me as I become big. Emma and I have never considered you our mother, so rest assured. Don't ever show yourself to us again. We've already talked to Grandma and Grandpa about the adoption. All that's left is your consent, but we're prepared for a refusal and have already contacted a lawyer. I'm so happy to think I'll finally be able to live with Emma again. Well, I live in Italy, so we won't see each other often, but considering everything we've been through, it's easy, right? Now we can enjoy many things together again.
Seeing them happy, I couldn't help but smile, and an infuriated Scarlett reached for my collar.
You're the one! You filled Emma's head with nonsense.
But Emma quickly turned her camera to Scarlett to protect her.
Don't get the wrong idea. I made this proposal to Grandma and Grandpa on my own. You thought I was your ally, so you never suspected me. I always comforted you, didn't I? But I've never once thought of you as my mother. My parents are my deceased father, and Grandma and Grandpa, who still love us.
Scarlett, who had never been defied by them before, looked like it was the end of the world. She sat down on the sofa in a daze, unable to accept reality.
Mia has always longed for you.
With Scarlett in such a pathetic state, I delivered the final blow.
You rejected the love she repeatedly sought from her mother.
You, drowned in men, have no right to call yourself a mother. I will take good care of Mia and Emma with Henry. Don't ever come near these kids again. You're no longer their family." Hearing this, Scarlett broke down in tears. She kept calling for Mia and Emma, but her pleas never reached them. As they asked to be kicked out, Henry turned Scarlett and the man away.
"If you persist, I'll call the police." At this threat, they left the house scared.
Since then, Scarlett and the man visited several times, begging to have them returned. But their persistence disgusted Mia, and she reported them to the police. Under the anti-stalking law, they were forbidden to approach Mia, ensuring her safety. Thus, they successfully severed ties with Scarlett. Their lingering feelings cleared, Mia and Emma lived freely. Emma became a world-famous pianist, met her destiny in Italy, and now performs concerts worldwide with her violinist lover. As for Mia, her movie adaptation was a global hit, making her a popular creator. We've been involved in her works and now support her life as a united family.
You're the housekeeper, so you do all the cooking, cleaning, and nursing. If you don't like it, get a divorce and get out.
Brian made it clear that I was his housekeeper. So that was your plan all along. I'm free labor, a housekeeper. On top of that, I'm also expected to look after your mother, Sarah.
Of course, we got married, and you're my wife. You're not cut out for it if you don't like it. Pack your bags and leave. I can divorce you anytime.
It must have been his final warning. Brian said it with a nasty smirk.
Listen, I'm an elite from a prestigious company. You're only just getting by with that pathetic business, thanks to me. Remember that.
All right, then. I whispered, and it seemed to reach Brian.
As long as you understand. Remember, do as I say.
Without responding, I turned my back on Brian and muttered quietly again. Then consider yourself fired.
What?
As a result of my actions, my elite husband. My name is Helen. 30 years old. I own a restaurant. People say it's impressive to be an owner at this young age, but the place was originally my father's, and I just took over. The chef, who's been with us since my father's time, is the one who actually cooks in the kitchen, preserving the flavors that have been cherished since its establishment. With the help of such longtime staff, I've somehow managed to keep the restaurant running. I'm still in the learning process. I took over the restaurant at the age of 22, right after graduating from college. Instead of getting a job, I was immediately entrusted with it from my father. I graduated from the economics department, so I thought I had learned a lot, but reality doesn't always follow the textbooks. Despite numerous failures, and my fair share of bad days, I've managed to keep the restaurant going to this day. I thought I was pretty lucky. About 5 years after I took over the restaurant, a man started coming regularly. It was Brian, who would later become my husband. Once, a group of men in suits came over. Brian was one of them. He said that he liked the food, and started coming as a regular customer. Brian and his colleagues were employees of a major food manufacturer, and they said they were visiting various restaurants for research. I've had my eye on this restaurant for a while, but I usually go to the bigger ones in town, or in the suburbs, so I always pass this place by. Oh, I understand. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. As I said that, Brian laughed sheepishly. I remember thinking he seemed honest and rather nice. My restaurant is indeed in such an odd location. But the taste is so good that many people have fallen in love with it and have been coming back for decades.
It's delicious, I've become quite the fan.
Brian confessed. True to his word, Brian became a regular customer and started talking a lot with me, the owner. Brian graduated from a top university and worked at a renowned company. He was the epitome of an elite. I had never been close to someone like that before. Not only was Brian brilliant at what he did, but he also had good looks. He was tall and slender with a well-defined face. Undoubtedly, he was the type who would be popular. Brian was 7 years older than me, so he was 34 at the time. I assumed he was married due to his age, but he laughed and said he was single. I've been living a life of work, and more work, and before I know it, I'm at this age. How silly of me. His easygoing manner, humorous conversation, and gentle tone made it seem like he wasn't an elite. Before I knew it, I had fallen for Brian. It was probably unrequited love. In his eyes, I was just the restaurant owner, and he was a regular patron. But then, out of the blue, he proposed to me.
Helen, would you consider being in a relationship with me, with marriage in mind?
I couldn't believe it. My heart was pounding. Could such a wonderful person really have feelings for me? It felt like a dream. Like Prince Charming had come for me. I felt like the protagonist of a fairy tale, and intoxicated by that dream, I accepted. A year later, I married Brian. But this fairy tale didn't end with, and they lived happily ever after. After we got married, the next chapter of the story turned into something much darker, like a picture book painted over completely in black.
Hey, you're my wife now. You understand what that means, right?
Brian said this soon after we started living together as a married couple.
Yes, we got married, so I'm your wife now.
I could only respond with confusion to his sudden change in tone. Then Brian suddenly raised his voice.
What kind of a response is that? I'm your husband, so you should address me with more respect. A wife should respect and honor her husband, don't you even know that?
I was too shocked to respond right away. What had happened? It was as if the Brian I knew had been replaced by someone else. A transformation from a prince to a tyrant. I wondered what kind of a witch had cast such a spell.
Listen, I'm an elite, you know that, right? You have to become a wife worthy of me. Prepare yourself for the training I'm going to give you.
From that day on, I was constantly ordered around by Brian. First, Brian demanded perfect housekeeping from me.
Make sure the house is immaculate, ready for anyone to come over at any time. That's a housewife's job. Don't you dare embarrass me.
My family ran a restaurant, so honestly, our house was never in a pristine state. My father was busy in the kitchen, and my mother was helping out too. There was no way we could manage perfect housekeeping. My parents did their best, tidying up and cleaning whenever they spotted a mess, but running a restaurant while raising me was overwhelming. My grandparents on my father's side lived far away, but my grandparents on my mother's side looked after me during particularly busy hours. That was how we managed to get by.
I can't do that. I mean, I have my restaurant to take care of. Don't make excuses before even trying. You don't even want to make any effort.
I managed to put the conversation to rest at the time by saying that I would try, but when I actually started, I realized that it was impossible.
Look, I have the restaurant to handle, so can't we hire someone for the housework?
It wasn't like I was saying I wouldn't do any housework at all. I just wanted to hire a housekeeper to make up for what I couldn't manage, but Brian didn't like the idea.
Why should we waste money like that? The best thing about a housewife is that she's free labor.
I was shocked by his words. Free labor, is that how Brian saw me? It became crystal clear at that moment.
That little restaurant of yours, who knows when it'll go under? You're lucky you found someone like me to support you. Be grateful and serve me well.
When we were dating, he had praised me for taking over the business from my parents at such a young age. That's one of the reasons why I fell for Brian. It might be a small place, but it meant a lot to me, and he had once praised my dedication to keeping it going.
Just keep the restaurant as insurance. If need be, we can sell it. It's worth something even if it's small. But if it starts losing money, shut it down immediately. It's not worth keeping if it's running at a loss.
That's what he said.
So that's what you've wanted all along. I'll never let go of that restaurant, no matter what. Just do your best, but don't forget that I'm only allowing this to be your little hobby because I feel sorry for you. Remember, it's because I care about you.
Brian said while laughing. From that day on, I started thinking about getting a divorce. But I still had some affection for Brian. I wanted to prove him wrong and make him apologize. I was sure he would understand someday. I worked like a horse with these mixed feelings. Indeed, it's a small restaurant, sustained mostly by regulars. Nowadays, most people opt for chain restaurants which offer the same taste wherever you go. That's why big chains thrive. But there will always be those who seek a nostalgic taste. That's why I want to keep the restaurant going. That desire never fades. While maintaining a seemingly peaceful marriage on the surface, I worked hard for the day I would prove Brian wrong. And to that, Brian half mockingly, half amusedly would say, "Wow, you're really trying hard, still keeping that restaurant going, huh? I thought it would fail soon." "Well, as long as you take care of the house, you can keep going." I was already doing it without being told. Every morning, I'd wake up early to prepare breakfast for Brian, wake him up, and see him off, then rush out of the house. I'd spend a busy day at the restaurant, and then after closing, I'd shop for groceries, come back home to cook dinner, and clean. When Brian returned, I'd serve him dinner, get ready for a shower, do the laundry, prepare for the next day, and take care of anything else left to do. I was cutting back on sleep, scheduling every day tightly to manage everything without wasting a moment. "If the house ever gets messy, I'll make you close down the restaurant immediately and sell it." Brian was probably waiting for that day. I could feel it. Perhaps he married me intending to have a housewife with assets who provides housekeeping services for free. Back then, I was infatuated with Brian. He knew that and thought I'd never stand up to him. That's probably why he chose me. It surprised me how much you dedicate yourself to the restaurant. I thought once we got married, you'd only have eyes for me. I feel betrayed," Brian said one day. I thought I was the one being betrayed. I had believed he understood me when he chose me. I wanted to say that, but I swallowed my words. And then things got worse. "My mother has fractured a bone and is hospitalized. Sarah." Brian's parents live in the neighboring state. I don't want to say this, but like Brian's true colors, they are not the most pleasant people. Brian is our pride and joy. A graduate from a top university, working at a leading company, an elite man. You've been chosen by Brian, so you should be grateful and serve us well. Helen doesn't realize her luck. Someone married to our son, Brian, should be greeting us in a fancy cocktail dress and a bottle of decent wine. That's right. It's just as I expected. A daughter of a restaurant owner must be poorly educated. That was the first thing they said to me when we met. Not only were they rude to me, but they insulted my parents too. I was about to say something back when my anger got the better of me, but Brian intervened to settle the matter, so I decided to keep my mouth shut for the moment. "Come now, Helen is still young. It's understandable that she lacks in certain areas. Think of it as having a potential to grow." I should have realized the true nature of this family at that point, but back then, I was convinced that Brian was protecting me, and that he was on my side. After that, my in-laws continued to make snide remarks every time something happened. "I can't believe Brian married a restaurant owner's daughter." Right, someone like Brian could have married a daughter of a CEO or an executive. Think about that, Helen. Be a good daughter-in-law to us. My in-laws seemed to think that only those working in big corporations like Brian were successful, and anyone in other professions, especially the service industry, were second-class citizens. But even so, Sarah's injury is unfortunate. I'd have to at least pay her a visit. But then Brian said something shocking. "It's a femur fracture. She'll need hospitalization and rehabilitation for a while after surgery. Can you look after her?" Wait, but aren't hospitals still enforcing visitation restrictions? I can maybe visit or bring something, but looking after her might not be allowed, right? Who said anything about the hospital? I mean, after my mother is discharged and comes to live with us. It took me a moment to understand what he meant. As I was silently pondering, Brian dropped the bombshell. "Don't be dense. Once my mother is discharged, she's moving in with us, along with my father." "What?" You have a problem with that? Of course, it was a problem. Even the thought of living alone with Brian was unbearable, let alone with his parents too. I can't take care of Sarah, I said firmly. I have my restaurant to run. It's impossible. Professional care would be best for her. Why should we pay for that when you're here? Then, close down the restaurant. Sell it and use that money for the family. Brian made an outrageous demand. I won't sell the restaurant. And I won't take care of Sarah.
You're the housekeeper, so you do all the cooking, cleaning, and nursing. If you don't like it, get a divorce and get out.
Brian made it clear that I was his housekeeper. So that was the plan all along. I'm free labor, a housekeeper. On top of that, I'm also expected to look after your mother, Sarah.
Of course, we got married, and you're my wife. You're not cut out for it if you don't like it. Pack your bags and leave, I can divorce you anytime.
It must have been his final warning. Brian said it with a nasty smirk. Listen, I'm an elite from a prestigious company. You're only just getting by with that pathetic business, thanks to me. Remember that. All right, then. I whispered, and it seemed to reach Brian.
As long as you understand. Remember, do as I say.
Without responding, I turned my back on Brian and muttered quietly again. Then consider yourself fired.
What?
Brian didn't hear it clearly and asked again, but I didn't bother repeating myself. I need to get things ready, so I can't do it right now. Fine, there's still time before my mother is discharged. They say she needs at least a month in the hospital. If you're ready by then, that's fine. Brian must have thought I had agreed and went to the bedroom, satisfied. I had been preparing for this for 2 years. Everything had been for this very moment. But even so, I still had hope. That Brian would return to the man he was before we got married. I didn't want to believe that the person I loved so much, that those happy days, were a lie. That's what I thought. But all my hopes were shattered. I had to make up my mind. I was ready. Hello, it's Helen. No, it didn't work out. It can't be helped. Let's take action. I made a call to someone, ready to move forward. A month later, an article made it to the front page of the economics section of the newspaper. The story was that the food manufacturer for which Brian worked for was about to be acquired by a restaurant group in a large stock buyout.
What the hell is this?
In frustration, Brian yanked the newspaper from side to side, tearing it in half.
This is a joke. We're a leading company. And now they're selling us out to some stupid restaurant group.
Brian crumpled the torn newspaper and hurled it against the wall.
Damn it, what's gonna happen? This can't be true.
Brian turned on the TV as if waking from a nightmare, only to see the same news. It seemed the acquisition was real.
Damn it, how did it come to this?
Brian slumped down on the sofa and ruffled his hair in frustration. There's nothing we can do about what's already happened. Here, take this. What's this? Brian looked at what I offered him and his eyes widened in shock. He seemed very surprised.
What is this?
It's a divorce petition.
I can see that. What the heck do you think you're doing giving me this?
Brian crumpled the divorce papers and threw them too. That too, after the newspaper? No matter how much you crumple it, nothing will go back to how it was.
Why do you want a divorce? I demand an explanation.
Are you kidding? Have you forgotten? You're the one who mentioned it. Brian went silent, likely remembering his own words. I won't take care of Sarah or live with your parents. If you don't like it, get a divorce. Those were your words, right?
I did say that. But well, I was bluffing, thinking you wouldn't listen to me otherwise.
So it was a threat. Brian didn't respond. I married you because I loved you. I trusted you. But you deceived me and betrayed me repeatedly. That's why I've decided to get a divorce. I took another divorce petition from the file and placed it in front of Brian. I have spare copies, so feel free to crumple that too. If I run out, I can get more or download it and print it out. We live in such convenient times. Brian stared at the divorce petition placed before him again.
This is a lie, right?
He looked at me with pleading eyes. No, it's true. This is reality.
You're not that kind of woman, right? You wouldn't do something so cruel when I'm so vulnerable.
It seemed like he wasn't going to accept it so easily. Think about what you've done, and what you've tried to do to me. Which do you think is worse? I took my time to tell Brian. Do you remember what you said after we got married? That a wife should respect and honor her husband? Brian didn't respond. I respected you even before we got married. That's why I decided to marry you. But after hearing those words, my respect for you vanished. People who trample on others are also trampling on their own feelings. Brian looked down, silent. You saw me only as free labor, a housekeeper. And the restaurant I cherished, you saw as an asset to cash in. I realize that, but still, I loved you.
Helen.
Brian looked up at me with hope.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize you cared about me so much. That's why I acted harshly. Please forgive me.
Brian held my hand, tears streaming down his face.
I'll change, I promise. Give me another chance. I'll treasure you this time.
I'm sorry. I pulled my hand away from Brian's.
Why not? We loved each other, didn't we? We can still make it work.
No, it's too late. I've lost all faith in you. That's why I decided to acquire your company.
What?
Brian looked at me, bewildered. The big restaurant group that acquired your company, with 1,900 full-time employees, I'm the president of that company. Unfortunately, I'm letting you go.
No, this isn't the time for jokes. What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind?
Brian half laughed, but it was the truth. Never mind that for now. Here, take this. Brian took the envelope I handed him with confusion, then screamed in disbelief as he checked the contents.
What's this?
It was evidence of Brian's affairs. There were documents from a private investigator and numerous photos. A female employee in the secretarial department, a subordinate's wife, a recent college graduate, a woman from a business partner, a girl from a club, and who else? The list was astonishingly long. Brian is attractive. And with his elite status, it's no surprise women flocked to him. Amazing, isn't it? Your affairs are too many to count on both hands. I'll be seeking compensation for all of them, from you and the women involved.
Hey!
What? Brian, looking at the documents and photos, turned pale and trembled. He tried to speak to me, but didn't seem to know what to say. The problem is the time and place of the affairs. A lot of them seem to happen when you were supposed to be working. I think this is a breach of trust against the company. A lot of them occurred when he was out of the office on business during working hours, making sales rounds, on business trips, and entertaining clients. Brian was with his mistresses instead, as detailed in the documents.
You've been investigating me like this all along?
Yes, that's right.
That's not fair.
Brian threw the documents and photos at me.
You used the money I earned for this?
No, not a single dollar of your money was used.
Liar. You don't have that kind of money.
Brian, being an elite, had a high salary. He saw me as free housekeeping labor, but he did contribute financially to the household. You know I'm the owner of a restaurant, right?
Yeah, that near bankrupt one. Just a hobby, isn't it? Owner, huh? Ridiculous.
It's true that if you look at the finances alone, the restaurant doesn't seem that prosperous. But there's more to it. I told Brian the whole truth. That restaurant was for gathering information. I was researching the current trends, what sells, and things like that. That restaurant, established by my parents, was the first of many. Now, it's a major chain with locations not just in America, but abroad too. The company that acquired Brian's workplace was the parent company of that restaurant chain.
This must be a lie.
It is not a lie. The location of the original restaurant was ideal for market research. The first restaurant thrived mainly due to my father's skills. But the reason we could expand was due to understanding customer preferences.
You never talked about your family business like this before. You tricked me.
I didn't trick you. I just didn't tell you. When I started dating Brian and considering marriage, my father advised me to wait and see. In hindsight, my father saw through your true nature. He said to tell you if you didn't change after our marriage. Back then, I would have married Brian regardless of his opposition. That's why my father had said such a thing. And what I told Brian when we married wasn't a lie. My father was ill and struggling to continue working. So, he had my uncle take his place as the company president, and he pretty much retired. That's why it was true when I said I took over the restaurant, because my father was sick. He had undergone major surgery and difficult treatments. As an only child, I was still too young to take over the company, so I was in charge of the restaurant, partly so that I could learn new things. My business degree couldn't make up for my extreme lack of experience. I was told that if I failed to run the restaurant, I wouldn't be acknowledged as the successor. So, I worked hard to continue my father's legacy and earn his approval. My father probably warned me to keep quiet, fearing the business might be taken over or ruined by a bad marriage. But I thought Brian was different, and I wanted to prove I could be honest with him. That's why I remained silent. Well, I was disappointed.
My father even told me that if Brian wasn't the man I thought, I should resolve it by myself.
Of course, that's what I should do. There was no way I could run such a large corporation if I couldn't handle something as small as this.
So, I've lived these past 2 years thinking about how I would make you regret it if you didn't show any remorse. Though, at the same time, I hoped you'd change your ways.
I sighed, picked up my mobile phone, and made a call. The person on the other end answered right away, so I just said what I needed to and hung up. Immediately, the bell to the front entrance rang, so I unlocked it to let the visitor in.
Who's that?
Just watch. Soon the doorbell rang, and I invited the guest in.
The company president.
It was the former president of the company Brian worked for, soon to be mine. The former president bowed stiffly to me. Please proceed. The former president silently handed Brian a document.
Termination notice.
It was an official document. Brian was being fired for misconduct, including meeting women during work hours and charging personal expenses as business entertainment. In exchange for firing Brian, I promised the former president that he could continue as the company's president, and he agreed to the condition.
Even minor misdeeds can accumulate into a major offense. What you did constitutes a serious breach of trust. It's only fair that you're dismissed.
Brian stood in shock, but I had no intention of letting him off the hook.
If you understand, would you please leave now? Why should I? This is my house.
This place is rented, right?
The landlord says you can't stay here anymore.
He doesn't want to rent it to you. Brian looked completely confused. I decided to elaborate further.
I bought this apartment. And you seem to have forgotten, but the lease was only until last month. So, you no longer have the right to live here. I don't plan on renewing the contract.
Brian was speechless.
We'll have to decide on asset division and who gets which furniture, but for now, I don't want to see your face. Could you go back to your parents' house? Sarah is about to be discharged from the hospital, isn't she?
Sarah was scheduled to be discharged in a few days after a month-long stay in the hospital.
Go back and prepare for Sarah's return.
We'll communicate through our attorneys about what comes next. Please take him with you. I handed Brian over to the former company president.
If you come back, I'll report you for trespassing. Even though we're not officially divorced yet, if the landlord says no, it's a no.
Brian left the room with the former company president silently. There was still more work to be done, but I have reached the end of a chapter. After Brian went back home, I started receiving calls persistently from my in-laws, having heard about the divorce.
Helen, you're so amazing. Why didn't you tell us? You truly are our son's wife. We are so proud of you.
Getting a divorce must be a joke, right? Helen, you loved Brian so much. Can't you forgive a fling or two? That's just men being men. At first, they were arrogant, but when they realized my resolve to get a divorce was firm, they resorted to threats.
You got Brian fired. What are you going to do about that? We'll demand compensation. What you did is unthinkable for our son's wife. Hiring a detective to investigate your husband's behavior. Imagine how it would affect your reputation if it gets out.
When I confidently told them to go ahead with claiming compensation and leaking information about me, they finally shifted to begging.
Helen, I'm really sorry. It felt like you took Brian away from me, and I acted spitefully. Please understand. What are we supposed to do if you leave us? I apologize if I upset you. So, please forgive Brian. If you can't forgive him, how about just us? We were family once, after all.
Of course, I refused everything they had said to me.
I've said it over and over again, but I'm divorcing Brian. If you keep pestering me, I'll report you to the police and consider taking legal action.
After consulting with my attorney, we sent them a formal warning, and they finally stopped contacting me. I made sure Brian paid the compensation. And I ensured it was paid from the assets we divided. Luckily, his high salary meant he had savings. Now jobless and without savings, he's back living with his parents. He found a job in the service industry that he once looked down upon, working from early morning till late at night. Considering he had affairs with other men's wives, he's also facing compensation claims from their husbands. I hope he works hard and pays it all off, no matter how many years it takes. I talked to the women with whom he had cheated. All of them apologized, saying they weren't serious and were just in it for Brian's money and elite status. While I had anticipated this, any relationship with a married person, regardless of the reason, is a legal offense and can be subject to a lawsuit. I made sure these women understood the severity of their actions by legally requiring them to pay compensation. Hopefully, this will be a lesson, and they won't repeat the same mistake. After that, I officially took over as the company president from my uncle. I appointed my uncle as the chairman to continue receiving his help and advice. Although my father's condition has stabilized, he's not in a state to work. But seeing me take over the company, he started seemed to bring him peace, and his spirits noticeably improved. Occasionally, he still offers his thoughts and advice, which I value greatly. I hope my parents live as long as possible. Right now, that's my greatest wish. I've caused them so much worry by getting involved with such an awful man. I gave my parents a lot of trouble, but I resolved my problems all on my own. That seemed to make my father approve of me as a manager. Next time, I want to meet someone better and reassure my parents as a daughter, but I'm not sure I want to get married for a while. This company is like my child now. I want to raise it and help it grow bigger and better. As a company president, I'm just taking my first steps. But I believe a bright future lies ahead on this path. And of course, I'm still running that restaurant. This restaurant was where my parents began their business, and it was the start of my career. In a way, it's like my first child that I shall cherish for the rest of my life. I want to treasure it forever so that I never forget where I came from.
You're nothing but a useless parasite. Get out of your parents' house now.
As I was moving down the hallway in my wheelchair, I was suddenly confronted by my brother's wife, Angela. Thinking it was just her usual harassment, I pretended not to hear. But then, she stood in front of me, blocking my way. Next thing I knew, I felt like I was floating, followed by a jolt of pain.
Ouch!
Angela had suddenly pushed me and my wheelchair to the floor. I felt a sharp pain in my arm and ended up crawling on the floor. Then, with a pleased smile, she kicked my wheelchair out of my reach. Why are you doing this to me?
You're in the way. I'm not giving back your wheelchair until you agree to leave your parents' house.
Angela always looked down on me, treating me horribly without remorse. At that moment, I realized I could never understand her and decided to leave the house I had grown up in.
Now this big house and all its wealth are mine.
Angela's face lit up with a devilish grin, delighted by the situation. At that moment, I vowed revenge against the truly terrifying Angela, who seemed willing to do anything for her own desires. I am Margaret, 33 years old. 3 years ago, on a rainy day, I fell down the stairs at the station. The fall caused a spinal injury, leaving me paraplegic, dependent on my wheelchair. When I first realized I couldn't move my legs, I cried tears of frustration. But now, I've accepted my reality and have adapted to work from home, doing what I can. I've always lived in my parents' house, which was remodeled 2 years ago to be wheelchair accessible. Being self-conscious, I mostly stay indoors. In my family home, I also live with my brother Kevin and his wife Angela, who married a year ago. Angela, my brother's wife, is 3 years older than me. I was initially excited to have Angela like a real sister, but that was a big mistake. The day Angela moved in, after unpacking, she smiled at me sweetly and asked in a gentle voice,
Now that we're living together, I'd love to have a heart-to-heart in your room to get along better, Margaret.
I'd love that. I really want to be friends with you, Angela. With high hopes for a pleasant future, I entered my room with Angela pushing my wheelchair. But as soon as the door closed, her kind expression vanished. She frowned like a different person and said something shocking. You know, you're an eyesore.
Excuse me. Are your ears as bad as your legs? Your presence in that wheelchair is an eyesore.
I was stunned by Angela's drastic change and managed a weak, uncertain smile, saying, You're joking, right? To which she berated me even more.
I hate jokes. Everything I said is my honest opinion. But you just said you wanted to get along.
That was just an excuse to be alone with you. Hearing this unexpected statement, my mind went into a panic and my hand, covering my mouth, started trembling. Wait a minute. I can't comprehend this. Does she hate me? As I took a deep breath trying to understand what was said, she hurled more insults at me. People who live leisurely at home without working are called parasites. Why are you being so harsh? Did you come to my room just to say these things? Yes. I feel sick having someone who only consumes money living in this house. I never imagined she could be this kind of person. My mind was still in turmoil, but I knew I had to respond. Looking her in the eye, I said, I am working and paying for my living expenses.
Don't lie. How can you work while staying at home? Are you stupid?
I explained that I work from home, but she didn't believe me at all. Instead, she demanded that I, a useless freeloader, leave the house. I was shocked by such harsh words from her, whom I had only met a few times since my brother's marriage. Confused and unsure what to do, she said, I can't stand even breathing the same air as you, and left the room. Alone, I kept replaying her words in my head. Should I tell my brother? As I was about to open my door, I remembered my past self. After falling down the stairs and losing consciousness, I awoke in the hospital to find my legs immobile. At that time, I couldn't accept this new reality immediately. Though I claimed to live facing forward, in reality, I hardly left my home, conscious of other people's eyes. Maybe Angela is in a similar situation. Instead of upsetting everyone by telling my parents and brother, I decided to wait and see. Surely, if we live together, we'll understand each other eventually. With that thought, I calmed my shaking heart. I tried to act cheerful around Angela, initiating conversations to get along better. But her cruel behavior only worsened day by day. She played the kind sister when our parents and brother were around, but as soon as they left for work, her harassment began. You don't work or pay, so you don't have the right to eat. One day, she threw away my lunch as soon as I sat down at the dining table. I've told you before, I do work, and I contribute to the food expenses. I have the right to eat. If you lie too much, your nose will grow like Pinocchio's. No matter how much I explained, Angela wouldn't listen. She insulted me and intentionally blocked my room door with objects to trap me inside. Unable to endure anymore, I told my parents and brother when they returned from work. I started talking when Angira is around, making sure she couldn't deny it.
I'm having trouble because Angela threw away my food and trapped me in my room.
That's not true. She said she didn't like what I made and threw it away. I was cleaning and accidentally left the vacuum cleaner in front of Margaret's room. I'm sorry for not being useful. Margaret, I'm sorry for making you feel bad. Angela acted like an actress, tearfully apologizing to me, and my parents and brother were completely deceived. I couldn't win against this. I started thinking that it would be better not to engage with her. After that, I hardly talked and spent more time in my room. One day, a year later, as I was returning to my room after breakfast, she started yelling at me in the hallway.
Still planning to stay in your parents' house? You're so persistent. I'm sick of this pest. You useless parasite, get out now.
Being used to her harassment, I pretended not to hear. But then she stood in front of me, blocking my path. Please move aside. As I tried to push past, Angela laughed and forcefully kicked the side of my wheelchair. I was hit by a severe impact and toppled over before I could steady myself. A sharp pain shot through my arm. I tried to get up, but I couldn't right my wheelchair lying on its side. Crawling on the floor in pain and humiliation, I looked up to see she standing over me, looking smug. Desperately looking up, I saw her trying to suppress a laugh, her arms crossed, clearly enjoying the situation. How pathetic you look. What a spectacle.
Please, help me.
Well, if I must.
There.
She kicked my wheelchair even further away, putting it out of my reach.
Don't you think this is too much?
I have to do this to get rid of a parasite, don't I?
Give me back my wheelchair now.
Not until you say you're leaving this house. So, what will it be? Looking down on me and acting so cruelly with ease, I realized I could never understand her. I decided to leave the home I'd grown up in.
Fine. I'll move to a high-rise condominium.
A high-rise condominium? As if you could afford that. Your denial is just sad. I don't care if you don't believe me. I'm leaving. Please return my wheelchair. Just wait for the caretaker who's due soon. I'm finally getting rid of the nuisance. Now this big house and all its wealth will be mine. Get on your precious wheelchair and start packing. That's when I realized her true nature. She would go this far for her own desires. Such a terrifying person. She looked like nothing but a devil to me, leaving me on the floor without returning my wheelchair, and then leaving the house. The floor was cold. And I was getting colder. I need to do something. Lying in the hallway in the middle of winter, my body temperature dropped rapidly. I tried to crawl to my wheelchair, but my injured arm was too weak to move. What if I stay like this? Shivering from the cold, I heard the front door open, and the caretaker arrived.
Help me, please!
Hearing my cry, the caretaker rushed over in a panic. Rubbing my injured arm unconsciously, the caretaker noticed something was wrong and immediately took me to the hospital. Luckily, there were no fractures, just bruises, so I was prescribed some ointment. Back at home, filled with frustration, I started preparing to move. I won't let this go. I'll show everyone her true nature. And so, the day of my move arrived. Angela had finished breakfast and was getting ready to leave. Hurrying to the entrance, she said to me, "Make sure you clean up and leave before I come back. And never return to this house. Don't worry. I'll leave without leaving a trace. Then goodbye. Forever." She left in unusually high spirits, her voice lively. I wonder what face she'd make if she knew the tragedy about to befall her. Get ready, my plan is almost complete. Despite saying this, it was hard to leave my cherished home. I said my farewells, touching the pillars and walls for the last time. Goodbye, my dear home. Thank you for everything. As the moving truck drove away, I watched the house disappear from view with a sense of longing. And true to my word to Angela, I moved into the top floor of a high-rise condominium. Watching the outside view, evening came before I knew it. The setting sun peeked through the buildings, illuminating my face. So beautiful. I can see this every day from now. Despite everything, I was filled with hope for my new life when my mobile phone rang. Seeing Angela's name on the screen, I calmly answered the call.
What's going on? The house is empty.
I've moved out, as you can see. I'm busy, so I'm hanging up now.
Wait. Who gave you permission to do this? There's no TV, no air conditioner.
I bought everything in the house, so no permission was needed.
What? Don't be ridiculous. Return everything.
I won't give back what's mine. By the way, I paid for the house's renovation and utilities. I should be asking you for money.
What? You're kidding, right?
I'm serious, as you hate jokes. And yes, I moved to a high-rise condominium. The view from the top floor is amazing. I took the opportunity to tell her the truth she never listened to. Did you realize you were bullying someone who provided you food and shelter?
That's impossible. I never took anything from you. How did a homebody like you make money?
I'm a stock trader.
That's a transparent lie.
I worked for the securities company before my accident. Trading stocks is easy for me. I have $3 million in savings now.
Wait. Are you saying you, not your parents, are the wealthy one?
Yes. I let my parents and Kevin save their earnings for retirement.
What? I married into the family thinking they were rich.
Angela's true intentions spilled out. I knew it but had to ask, and she confirmed my suspicions. Didn't you love Kevin?
Love doesn't fill the stomach. I thought you were rich after seeing the big house. I was so fooled.
You misunderstood on your own. By the way, I invest in properties too. I own several apartments besides this condo. The wealthy and victorious one is me. You misjudged, sadly.
What? I won't forgive you.
Make a fuss if you want. You should worry about yourself.
Why?
I've put that house up for sale.
We're still living there. That's terrible.
My parents and Kevin moved with me, so you're left alone. Oh, and Kevin has blocked your calls and emails.
What?
I almost laughed at her loud and shocked reaction. She frantically tried to contact Kevin, but of course, got no response. I revealed more truths she didn't know. I owe it to you, Angela, for pushing me in the wheelchair and causing my injury. Thank you.
What?
The caretakers saw everything and told my family, so they helped me. Actually, we had secretly planned to move out without you. Moreover, my brother prepared something to definitely trap you. Remember last night when Kevin suggested you go out today to make moving easier? That was to clear the house before you knew it. She was silent for a moment, then suddenly changed her tone, trying to sound sweet. Margaret, I think I went a little too far. Let's be close from now on. Okay? Telling such lies will make your nose grow like Pinocchio's. I wish we could be real sisters, Margaret. I can't stand this nonsense. By the way, this whole conversation is on speaker, and my family is listening. No one will forgive you. Kevin is divorcing you, so please live well on your own. She, realizing she couldn't persuade me, made a last-ditch effort.
Kevin, can you hear me? You're joking about the divorce, right?
He doesn't seem interested in responding. He's laughing and enjoying your desperate situation.
Shut up. Let's talk properly. I'll find your condo and come right now. Tell me where. Please.
Everyone burst into laughter at her, thinking she could still be forgiven. But knowing her, she might try to find our new home, so I sternly warned her. If you force your way into the condo, I'll sue you for trespassing.
Don't say such scary things.
I'm serious. And about the injury and mental distress you caused, I'll sue for compensation. I have the hospital reports, so you can't escape. Pay $20,000.
I'll be broke. You don't need the money, you're rich.
I'm asking for compensation to make you reflect. If you don't agree, talk to my lawyer. Goodbye forever.
I don't care about poor Kevin, but I don't want to lose wealthy you. I apologize. Please forgive me.
No way, you fool. I hung up forcefully. I gave Angela's photo to the condo's doorman, warning him about her, so security will respond if she steps foot inside. My brother, not wanting to see Angela's face anymore, had a lawyer I know finalize the divorce. Angela, who squandered my brother's earnings, only got $2,000 in the property settlement. She was living in the house we put up for sale, but the real estate buyer found her and she was fined for trespassing. Angela, now a criminal, is shunned even by her family and is lost without a home. I demanded the promised $20,000 in compensation. We will make sure she pays. Our family is living spaciously in a new high-rise condo, enjoying every day. Although I liked my big detached house, the view from the expansive windows, unobstructed by my wheelchair, is refreshing. The city lights at night bring a new joy.
It's unthinkable to ask for food money. Taking money from your family is shameful, you should realize that.
As my son's wife shouted, glaring at my husband and me, I thought to myself that what's truly unthinkable is her behavior. Unthinkable indeed, you fool. People say your daughter-in-law is a stranger, and it couldn't be more true. Such a brazen woman, she's not part of my family. The one who silenced my daughter-in-law was a single remark from our beloved grandchild. I am Lily, a 65-year-old housewife. I've been married to my husband Thomas for 40 years. We have 2 sons, both of them have their own families now. My eldest son, Michael, lives nearby. He has an 8-year-old daughter, but we rarely see her due to her busy school schedule. However, the last person you want to see is often the one who shows up uninvited. Lily, do you have anything you don't need? I'll take it off your hands. The loud one at the front door is Michael's wife, Emma. I've disliked her ever since my son married her. Looking back, she was always a bit off. She boldly asked about my husband's salary and our savings. Emma, you shouldn't ask such things, even to family. It can upset people. I once said to her, in a lecturing tone. Eh? Why not? We're family. My parents tell me everything. Oh, by the way, they said they hardly have any savings. Seeing her laugh, I felt drained. Later, my younger son's wife said, Lily, I need to talk to you about my sister-in-law. The content was unbelievable. At that time, she was struggling to conceive and was undergoing treatment. Why don't you have kids? You should have them while you're young, it gets harder as you get older. Such meddling made her neurotic. Even when Michael scolded his wife, she showed no remorse.
I was just giving advice as a mother,
she defiantly claimed. But after successful treatment, a grandson was born to my younger son. Then, this time, Emma sent a message.
Just because you had a boy doesn't mean he's the heir, right? My daughter is the first grandchild and the eldest son Michael's child.
To the second son's wife soon after giving birth. This incident caused my younger son's family to move away, reducing our meetings to a few times a year. Children grow up watching their parents, and looking at Emma's parents, it might not be entirely false. My husband sighed deeply. Emma's parents, living in the countryside, were equally strange. Every year at Thanksgiving, we send gifts to those who've been kind to us, including Emma's parents. One year, I received a phone call from Emma's parents.
Hello?
I was taken aback. So, you know, the assortment of sweets and towels is fine, but we were thinking meat would be better, right? What is she talking about? It's the thought that counts, and besides, we've never received a Thanksgiving gift from Emma's parents. Yet, they had the audacity to say such things. I was hesitant, But when I told Michael about the call, he immediately scolded his wife. I should have told you what they like. Sorry. Next year, please send them their favorite things. I was stunned by her audacious response.
Emma, that's not the point. We sent those gifts with love, but both my husband and I felt very offended. We never receive anything from your parents, so we'll refrain next year. We don't want to impose,
I said and abruptly hung up the phone. Emma's causing friction in our family. She's odd, we should keep our distance. But contrary to my wishes, when my granddaughter Aria started elementary school, Michael's family moved close to our house. This house will be well taken care of by our family. Lily, you and your husband can comfortably move into a home for the elderly. When she said this with a smile, both my husband and I were speechless. In essence, she meant they wouldn't care for us but would take the house. We didn't expect care from them, especially not from Emma. But living nearby meant we'd frequent use the same supermarket. When I go shopping, there's an 80% chance I run into Emma. Oh? Lily, are you shopping too? What a coincidence, so am I. Emma says this, but I'm not a fool either. She must have seen me leaving our apartment for the supermarket. And her goal was clear, just one thing. These, I saw on TV. They were delicious. This is also recommended. And this too. She would unceremoniously add items to my shopping cart. I live with just my husband, we can't eat all of these. Even I put things back, she'd quickly return them to my cart, saying, "It's fine, I'll take them, don't worry about it." Fine for what? I thought, but with neighbors and friends working at the supermarket, I couldn't raise my voice. After I paid, she brazenly opened the packages as if they were her share and stuffed them into plastic bags, then into her own shopping bags. Even with a 10-pack of eggs, she'd say, "You can't eat all these, right? I'll take some." And open the pack herself. That finally made me angry. I use eggs every day, it's okay. Please give them back. And this meat too, I'll freeze any leftovers. When I said this, Michael and Aria both love eggs. I want them to eat a lot. And meat too. But, you know, Michael's salary has been cut recently. She showed a visibly downcast appearance. Looking at her shopping bag, it was mostly discounted items. Because of her loud voice, other shoppers looked at us strangely. On a day I didn't encounter her at the supermarket, a neighbor working there stopped me to say, "Can't you do something about your son's wife? Asking for more discounts, not listening when we say we don't put sale stickers on items in the cart." Her embarrassing behavior made me feel like my face was on fire. Give me a break. My head's going to explode. Most of my conversations with my eldest son Michael became about his wife. That weekend, Michael and his unusually serious-faced wife Emma came over. As soon as she entered the room, "Lily, I got too comfortable thinking we're family. I'm sorry for the trouble at the supermarket. I'll refrain from such embarrassing behavior from now on." Is this really the same woman? She seemed genuinely remorseful. I later learned from my son that they had a serious fight. He threatened divorce if there wasn't an improvement, which seemingly changed her attitude. Life was peaceful for a while. But people don't change that easily. After that, I felt awkward using the supermarket, so I started ordering groceries online. Then, my son's wife began bringing my granddaughter Aria to visit regularly.
"Grandma, I drew this."
She showed us a well-drawn picture. "Oh my. Aria, your colored pencils are quite short," I remarked. I want to buy her new pencils, but things are tough. Sorry, Aria. Emma interjected. Seeing this, my husband took out his wallet. "Here, buy Aria some new pencils with this," and gave her a small amount of money. She continued visiting, saying Aria's shoes were too small or she needed new clothes, always appealing to us. Sometimes she'd boldly enter our kitchen and ask, "Do you have anything you don't need?" Hey, is Michael's company really struggling that much? And if life is so hard, why doesn't Emma work? She's been a housewife since marriage, at home during the day. My daughter-in-law, Emma, has been a housewife ever since she got married, and seen to be at home during the day. If she could use that time for part-time, her life would be a little easier. My husband and I often discussed this. That's the point. Then, out of the blue, my eldest son's family came over.
We're thinking of moving in here.
A completely unexpected proposition. My husband and I exchanged glances. Sorry to spring this on you, Dad, Mom. Emma suddenly started insisting on living together. See, you got your way. Let's go home. My son tried to take her home, but she stubbornly refused, and it was getting nowhere. My husband, having had enough, said, "If you're that insistent, we won't ask for rent. But you'll have to split the food costs with us. We're living on a pension, after all." Then, she stopped in her tracks.
It's unthinkable to ask for food money. Taking money from your family is shameful, you should realize that.
She came back with an outrageous response. Aren't you the one who should be embarrassed? And then,
if that's how you feel, then we are done as of today. And of course, I'll never let you see Arya again.
I watched her fury in silence. Thinking back, ever since she came into our lives, I've never had a day of peace. I've tolerated her because she's my eldest son's choice, but now I've reached my limit. I'll only cut ties with her alone and secretly ask Michael to let us meet our granddaughter. When I was thinking this,
hey, what does disowning mean? Like, not seeing each other anymore? If that's the case, I want to disown Mom.
Everyone was shocked by my granddaughter Arya's words.
Eh? Arya, what are you saying?
Especially Emma, who looked astonished.
Because, Mom, do you know what my friends call you? The beggar. Sometimes they laugh at me, and I don't want to go to school. The one who's embarrassing is you.
Arya's face looked like she was about to cry. Apparently, Emma had been making begging attacks on the parents of Arya's friends too.
Besides, you buy things you like, but my clothes and shoes are old. You said you'd buy me new colored pencils, but you never do.
Hearing this, I asked,
Eh? What do you mean? We gave you money to buy Arya colored pencils, didn't we? I can't believe it, but did you use it for yourself?
My eldest son's wife made an uncomfortable face and replied,
No. I used it for living expenses. It's hard to get by on just Michael's salary.
My son immediately said,
What money? And you always say that, so I've been working hard. I've been promoted twice since we got married. How much do you need to be satisfied? Or is this about divorce? I told you, if you cause any more trouble for my family or others, there won't be a next time. Above all, you've hurt Arya. You're a failure as a mom.
With his cold words, Emma's eyes filled with tears.
But I can't help it. We were poor growing up. I couldn't have what I wanted. Now I'm an adult. I want to eat and buy what I like. What's wrong with that?
To her crying hysterically, I said,
Don't be ridiculous. Making your child suffer while satisfying your own desires is just an excuse. I have no blood relation to you, and I would have welcomed a good daughter-in-law, but honestly, I only care about Michael and Arya. A foolish woman like you, I disown you.
And with that, she was taken back home by Michael. She probably thought living in our house would save on living expenses. What a joke. We decided to take care of our granddaughter Arya for a while. Because Emma had said,
You're an ungrateful child for repaying kindness with ingratitude.
To her daughter. Thinking she is doing her child a favor just shows she is finished as a mom. Emma insisted on not divorcing, but my son ignored her and forcibly sent her back to her parents' home. Of course, we got many calls from her ridiculous parents, but we ignored them all. The divorce wasn't easy and went to mediation. But thankfully, my son got custody. That's because her arguments were terrible, all about wanting to stay a housewife and not wanting to divorce, with no thought for Arya. Also, my son hadn't told us, but he had been living a repressed life, documented in his diaries. It was also discovered that Emma had been secretly saving a lot of money in her own bank account, which worked in my son's favor regarding the distribution of property. Honestly, I didn't want to give that woman a cent. My son Michael and granddaughter Arya moved out of their apartment to live with us.
Arya, I'm so sorry for making you feel lonely with all my work. I'm really happy you want to live with me.
My son was crying with happiness. Arya looked a bit shy. I thought peaceful days were finally here, but then, a few months later, some unwelcome visitor started ringing our doorbell incessantly while my son was at work and my granddaughter at school.
What?
Looking at the monitor, I saw an unexpected figure.
What do you want? Everything's been settled, right?
Opening the door, there stood Emma, my former daughter-in-law, and her parents, faces filled with anger.
Settled? Don't be ridiculous. Why haven't you paid child support?
Emma's mom's words confused us.
Excuse me? We're raising Arya here. If Emma were to pay, maybe, but why should we?
My husband glared at the three of them, baffled. Then Emma's dad said,
Emma has no income after the divorce. For the time being, your son should be taking care of her. That's why he needs to pay child support for Emma.
Behind her parents, my ex-daughter-in-law looked at me triumphantly. We couldn't help but laugh at such ridiculous statements.
You might want to look up what child support means. How old is your daughter? All I see is a healthy adult woman over 30. Did you really pay travel expenses just to come here and say something so foolish?
Following me, my husband added,
What you're doing is extortion. Now that we're divorced, we're strangers. We won't hesitate to call the police next time. To be honest, I've never once considered you family.
He then pulled out his mobile phone. Seeing this, they panicked.
Police? That's ridiculous. We're leaving.
And they left hastily, almost fleeing. Watching them go, we mused.
Those parents seemed normal until the marriage, but you really can't understand people. Child support for a wife? Never heard of such a thing. That woman, crazy till the end.
We laughed for a while, remembering their foolish faces. Apparently, Emma's family was struggling financially. Unbeknownst to us, they had been recipients of TANF for years, receiving it under the pretense of the dad's mental illness. However, it was revealed as fraud following an anonymous tip. They were all healthy, they should have been working. It's infuriating to think such people were getting money meant for those truly in need. They were working and paying fines for a while, but people don't change easily. They were arrested for theft a few months later. They're strangers now, but I hope they continue to struggle. As for us, we've been living peacefully as if it was all a lie. Arya has brightened up and brings friends home more often. Furthermore, my younger son's family decided to move back here for his job transfer. I've been in touch with my daughter-in-law.
Lily, please teach me cooking again. My son is thrilled that he'll get to see everyone more. And he's so excited to play with his cousin Arya after we move.
Looking back, I saw the grandchildren playing happily together, a smile naturally forming on my face. Then, 3 years after the divorce, my son Michael remarried. Her name is Elizabeth, introduced by a friend. She was mistreated by her ex-husband and his family for not being able to have children. Elizabeth is kind and gentle, getting along well with my younger son's wife. Above all, I miss my grandchild Arya very much, and we prepare meals together.
Arya shyly called me mom for the first time the other day. I thought I would never be able to be mom, so I was so happy.
Elizabeth teared up as she told me. I gently patted her back.
I'm truly happy that someone as kind-hearted as you became Michael's wife and Arya's mom.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Soon, my son's family will move to a new home. Not too far from here. Michael and Arya had a hard time with his ex-wife, but with Elizabeth, they'll surely have peaceful days. My husband and I are planning to start a small garden when we're alone. It seems we'll be able to spend our old age in peace. Thinking about this, I savored our current happiness.